That was Dead or Alive with You Spin Me Round, and this is the Baller Skeptic Roundtable on the 22nd of July 2015. This is episode 7. I'm your host, John LeBon, live from Brisbane, Australia. And I'm joined, as always, by David Weiss of Deep Inside the Rabbit Hole, live from New York. David, thanks for joining us.
Good morning, John, or good night. How's it going?
Oh, I'm very well, mate. What did you think of Spin Me Round by the Dead or Alive?
It was great. It was perfect. There's so many songs now that I'm open to our reality that I just see completely differently. So
If I told you that one got me out of my chair and I was kind of dancing around the room while we were listening, what would you say?
I would believe you.
I'm in a good mood, man. I'm excited. We've got a terrific guest tonight. We'll get to him in just a moment. But, of course, we're joined, as always, by Matrix Decode, live from Spain via London. How are you today, Matrix?
Hey, John and everyone. Yeah, good, thanks. It's afternoon here, and it's warm weather on this earth that we're living on. Yeah, that song, it's an interesting song, very appropriate, and I was looking to use it in one of my upcoming videos, but I might have to change it now.
Well, that one was recommended to me by one of our many listeners. Of course, we've got a live chat function, so if you are listening live, make sure you tune in to John LeBon, and we've got more than 20 people there right now, so thanks to everyone for coming out. But tonight we better get to our special guest, and I have been looking forward to this one all week, so let me read out this little intro that I've got prepared. Our guest tonight posted his first video about the Flat Earth back in March of this year, apparently after seeing Mark Sargent's Flat Earth Clues. Now, since then, he has posted a number of videos debunking the spinning ball model and has attracted over 1,000 subscribers to his YouTube channel. He's known for his passionate monologues, some people might call them rants, attacking heliocentrism and the lie system which pushes it. But his most popular videos also tackle the practical questions regarding the Flat Earth model, including the positioning of the sun and the moon. Like many flat earthers on YouTube, our guest has also spent time attacking other aspects of the New World Order, including Zionism, the military-industrial complex, secret societies, and, of course, the Talmud. It's our pleasure tonight to be joined by StinkyCash, aka Jeff, and thank you for taking the time to join us tonight.
Thanks for having me on, John. Hey, David, how you doing?
David,
Sorry, I was on mute there. Sorry about that. I'm doing well. Good morning.
Matrix, what's up, man?
Hey, man, good to have you on the show.
It's great to be here.
Well, what we're going to do tonight, if it's cool with you, Jeff, I've got a basic rundown. We're going to go through a few topics. We'll start off by getting the background to yourself, how you became a leading flat earther on YouTube, and then we'll look at the influence that some others have had on you, like Mark Sargent. Then I want to talk about some of the best arguments that you've got against the spinning ball theory. Then we'll spend some time talking about your beliefs with regards to the sun and the moon and the flat earth. Then we'll talk about your trip to Israel. I'm looking forward to hearing about that. We'll talk about some other topics like Zionism and the Talmud and these kinds of things. And if we get time, just to appease my old friend David Weiss, we'll talk about puddle theory. So that's the rundown for tonight. But let's start off, if it's cool with you, StinkyCash, just give us the basic background to who you are, what you were doing before you discovered flat earth theory, how it's changed you in your life, and what you currently believe. Let the listeners know who you are. The floor is yours, my good man. Take it away.
Thanks, John. Yeah, so my name's Jeff. I probably started waking up to the truth about the New World Order around last June. I used to be like a brainwashed uber liberal, MSNBC and all the, the Huffington Post and all the liberal media. They really had me, and I was totally brainwashed by it. I used to support Obama. I probably would have voted for Hillary Clinton. I was just a total brainwashed sheep. And then, for absolutely no reason whatsoever, last June, I decided, hey, let me look into the Kennedy assassination, just for shits and giggles. So, and I was actually trying to prove that Lee Harvey Oswald did the assassination. I mean, a lot of us probably start off like that. And started looking into it, couldn't prove it. I could not debunk any conspiracy theory regarding JFK. It was such an obvious conspiracy regarding the CIA, maybe the Israeli Mossad, and all the secret societies. And, then you start going down the rabbit hole. JFK led me to the Federal Reserve, and I started looking into Nixon and Watergate, and I started looking into, sound money, gold and silver money. I went through the typical awakening path that most of us go through, I think. When you go through your libertarian Ron Paul, Alex Jones, you know, fear porn stage, and then you might move past that and start getting into, like, you know, the whole spiritual aspect of things. So I think I went through a pretty normal progression during my awakening. And then it was probably about February when a few of my YouTube subscribers were telling me to check out Mark Sargent's Flat Earth Clues. So I was very hesitant at first because, of course, you know, I thought I knew everything. You know, I had a great science teacher in high school that taught us all the science about the globe. So I understood that, you know, the equator spun at 1,000 miles an hour. And, you know, here in New Jersey, I'm spinning like 750 miles an hour. But, you know, I can't feel any of this because of relativity and, you know, gravity. So he taught us all these great theories, and I bought into them for so many years, and I thought the globe was just the most interesting thing I'd ever come across. And I was very hesitant to getting into Flat Earth. People were telling me to watch Mark Sargent's videos, but I said, you know, hey, I've been on an airplane before. I'm pretty sure the Earth's a ball. You know, I said everything that all the typical sheeple say when you first tell them the Earth is flat. But eventually I gave in, and I believe the first video I watched was his long haul video. I think that's maybe video 6 or 7. And that was probably the most interesting video I watched. And then I went on, you know, the flight tracker websites, and I noticed that what he was saying was true. The flights in the southern hemisphere over oceans tend to disappear, and you can't track them with the GPS. So that's pretty much when I made my first video, which I just did on the spot, saying, hey, everyone, I, you know, confirmed what this Flat Earth, I called him the Flat Earth guy because it was so new to me, I didn't even know his name. And that's pretty much where I got started, and I've been making Flat Earth videos ever since then.
Excellent introduction, mate. Well, I've got a few questions for you. I went back and looked through your catalogue of videos, and I noticed that your first one was basically trying to prove or disprove Mark Sargent. And you're right, you did refer to him as the Flat Earth guy. And I noticed when I was watching your video, I could sort of hear it in your voice. It was almost like you were surprised that when you went to try Sargent's claims that if you check the flight tracker, the flights aren't tracked in the southern hemisphere. I could almost hear in your voice you were surprised to hear that he was correct about it. So by trying to debunk a flat earther, you found out, wow, there's something to this flat earth theory. Is it fair to say that Mark Sargent was the first guy who really got you locked onto this flat earth notion?
Yes, I would definitely say that, and I would say it because I think that's what Mark's job is. He's kind of a gatekeeper that is leading people to flat earth. And if you look at like Google Analytics, the flat earth, movement kind of started to blow up when Mark Sargent started to make his videos, even though, people like Matt Boylan and Eric Dubé were already on the scene making videos. This didn't blow up until Mark Sargent kind of came out of nowhere.
How do you like that, boys? We're not even 10 minutes into the show, and StinkyCash has already fired the first broadside at Mark Sargent. We'll save the gossiping, if you like. Not gossiping, I shouldn't say that. We'll save the criticisms of the other flat earthers for later on in the show. I'll throw to you there, Matrix. When did you first find StinkyCash's material? Do you have any comments to throw at him in this first topic, talking about how StinkyCash came to be one of YouTube's prominent flat earthers?
Well, I came across his videos, it must be maybe a couple of months ago now. His video to do with how the sun and the moon rotate around the Tropic of Capricorn and Tropic of Cancer, and he's measuring the distances between them at sunrise and sunset, and I thought that was it was a really good video, and the spiral of the sun and the moon and its path and so on. For me, lately I've been questioning things like the tilt of the Earth and the equator and its position, and the conservation of angular momentum that the Earth holds as it goes around the sun allegedly. And I've been questioning things like the Tropic of Cancer and Tropic of Capricorn and where they are, and whether that's a part of the ball model that they put into place. So I wonder what Jeff's thoughts are on those.
Well, I think essentially the flat Earth map that we've been using, that model, that UN logo map, I do believe that that's the shape of the Earth, and all they did was just take that outer ring and fold it in and make a ball out of it. So I think there are certain measurements, like the distance they give for the equator. I don't think that's a distance that they could fake. I think that's an actual distance that they used to come up with their fake ball. So I think they just reverse engineered everything. So I do believe that the equator is, roughly 24,900 miles, and that the Tropic of Cancer, is inside that, and the Tropic of Capricorn is outside that. It's the area of the ball Earth should be the exact same area as the flat Earth, assuming that the ice doesn't go on forever.
Right, yeah. David?
So the one thing I haven't wrapped my mind around or across yet is, I don't know if you guys are aware, if you look at the measurements of the Great Pyramids at Giza, the circumference, the height, the width, all these different measurements, they all correlate to the sizes of the globe, that we're told the globe is. Now, did they backward engineer the size of the globe based on the pyramids? Is there a correlation between the Earth being flat and a globe? Are those numbers, relate the same way to the pyramids? It's something that I want to dive into, but I haven't gone into it yet. So that's got me a little baffled.
Well, Dirth, I promise we'll come back to that one later in the show. There's plenty of topics that we've got on the rundown for today. Just starting off with you there, StinkyCash. A lot of people, they'll listen to someone like Mark Sargent or Eric Dubay or someone even like yourself, now that you're getting some prominence, and they'll think to themselves, am I really starting to re-question heliocentrism? Am I really actually considering the flat Earth? Do you want to talk the listeners through your own experience from the first moment you found Mark Sargent through to the first time you said maybe to someone in your actual life that you now believe the Earth might be flat? Do you want to talk the listeners through your own personal experience of that transformation from the spinning ball model to the flat model?
Well, it definitely was a slow process. Like I said, I was very resistant at first. So Mark Sargent was the first flat Earth video I ever watched. I watched his long haul video, and after that, I went through all the clues. And then that led me to other flat Earth videos. So I discovered Eric Dubay shortly after that, and through him I discovered Matt Boylan. I thought he was really interesting at first. I really respected him. And then before you know it, there are a bunch of people making flat Earth videos. They're springing up all over the place. And I think the aha moment for me was just when you can apply real science to it, like the properties of water, how water always finds its flatness, how could water stick to the outside of a ball, especially if it's spinning? Wouldn't the centrifugal force just fling the water off the ball? And then you start to realize that most of this science, so-called science, it comes from Jesuit priests and religion, and it's really all about sun worship. The heliocentric model, where they place the sun at the center, it's nothing but sun worship. And I do believe it kind of comes from the Catholic Church and the Vatican, who changed the Sabbath to Sunday and, proudly worship the sun every Sunday. And all the images that they show of Jesus all have the sun behind them, and they've pretty much hijacked the idea of Jesus and turned him into the sun. And I think all of this comes back to sun worship and removing the divinity from humanity, okay? By telling us that we're on a spinning ball in infinite space that was all created from this cosmic accident, this Big Bang explosion, and there are billions of other planets out there and billions of other suns, and we're just a speck of nothing, and it makes us small and it makes us unimportant, and it removes the divinity from us. So we've forgotten, as a civilization, humanity has forgotten who they really are. And that's where we are today. It's the year 2015, or whatever year it really is, and humans have completely lost touch with reality.
And yet, I'm sure there's many people in your life who would have said, when you said that you no longer believed in the spinning ball, they would have said that you have lost touch with the reality. I think it's important for us, those of us who are willing to say publicly we don't believe in spinning ball, there are many listeners who might not be so confident. Can you tell the listeners, StinkyCash, what kind of feedback you've been getting from friends and family about the videos that you make on YouTube?
Well, I have, in my real life, I have a lot of friends that have a lot of respect for me. They know I'm a pretty intelligent guy, and a few of them were actually pretty open-minded to this, and I was able to convert a few of my friends to being flat earthers. Online, I've gotten a mixed reaction. Most of my subscribers have come from my flat Earth videos, and all the subscribers I had from my other topics, I think they all unsubscribed because it's such a polarizing topic. It's such a big lie, and the programming and the brainwash runs so deep that it's such a hard pill to swallow, and a lot of people aren't ready for it. So, a lot of people call me crazy. A lot of people say I'm off my rocker, tinfoil hat, conspiracy theorist, science denier. There's so many labels. Just read through the comments of my videos, and you'll get an idea of the names I've been called.
Well, we've got 40 people watching live right now. In the live chat, Cy Obstacle says that Flat Earth has hit Facebook and it seems to be going mainstream. It does seem that way to me, that this thing has taken off very quickly, and I'm not the least bit afraid to tell people. If they ask me in real life, do I believe we're on a ball? I say, no, I no longer do. You can convince me that we're on a ball. Just give me some good arguments. But for the time being, no, I don't believe we're on a spinning ball. Matrix, I'll go to you over there. Just focusing on this topic of the impact that it has on our personal lives. Have you seen in your own life that people have treated you differently when you've told them that you've rejected the ball? Have you told them? What's been the kind of feedback that you've gotten?
No, I've not really discussed it with many people in my personal life, just a few friends on Facebook and a few open-minded friends. They've got to be aware of the bigger conspiracies that are going on, like 9/11 and so on. But it's definitely not easy to talk to people. I mean, you're going to definitely alienate people, and they're going to get angry with you, and they're going to think you're crazy immediately because of the programming that they've been subjected to all their life. So I think what I do is I have friends online and discuss it with them mostly, and make videos about it and put it out like that, and hope that people can like Jeff is putting out videos also and on the subject, and hopefully the word spreads and people take an interest and their curiosity is piqued. So I think that more and more people are coming onto this subject and rapidly and doing different aspects, addressing different aspects, coming up with new ideas, new ways of looking at the science and examining the science and performing experiments and so on. So I think what Jeff is doing some great work with his maps and also is just talking about the subject like he does with his on a few of his videos. So.
Well, I think StinkyCash is a good example of what can happen. If you go through his video catalogue, he uploaded disappearing flights over the South Atlantic confirmed on March 20. By March 21, he uploaded his video, The UN are members of the Flat Earth Society. So it seems to me, and you can tell me if I'm wrong here, Jeff, that once you looked at Sargent's videos, you tried to disprove one of his theories. When you were unable to debunk Sargent, you pretty quickly became a regular uploader of these kinds of videos. Would you agree that it's very easy to go from a ball earther to a non-ball earther and even a flat earther if you're the kind of person who already understands that we can be lied to?
Well, I agree with what Matrix said, that I don't think flat Earth is the first truth that people should be exposed to in order to try to wake them up. Like, there are a lot of other so-called conspiracies that you could share. I don't like to use that word. But, there's a lot of other truths out there that people need to learn about before they get to flat Earth. Like, how can you believe the Earth is flat if you still believe NASA went to the moon? I pretty much decided that NASA did not go to the moon long before I became a flat Earther. And I think it's simple to be converted to a flat Earther, because when you really start looking at the ball with an open mind, it's just silly. It's just absolute nonsense, and nothing makes sense.
Yeah, I completely agree. Well, we're going to move on to some more topics in a moment. Before we do, though, Dirth, you've been quiet there. Any thoughts you want to add to this notion that people like StinkyCash, they're a good example. You can go from a ball earther to a non-believer relatively quickly compared to some of the other alternative theories out there.
Yeah, I have my Deep Inside the Rabbit Hole podcast and my Exposing the Big Three, which is Sandy Hook, 9/11, and Boston. And I put a lot of years of effort into waking people up. I originally started with just 9/11 and then Boston, and then it took a while to wake people up to Sandy Hook. And when I brought Sandy Hook on board, people are like, "You're crazy," because the emotion was still strong because I started that pretty early. And then finally, I've spent all this effort, an unbelievable amount of effort, and I've got everyone on board, that whole part of my life, that whole podcast part of my life. And I've got them on board. I even got my personal side of my relationships on board, where they see my posts and, they might not be so open about it, but they start to get it. And then I came across, we'll call him Shill Mark Sargent, who completely woke me up to the flat earth, and then came across Dubé, just like you, Jeff, came across your videos, Matrix's videos, and it took me about 3 months before I even mentioned it in that world, and I completely discredited myself, lost bunches of subscribers, but I'm okay with that. They'll be back when they wake up, and Matrix commented that he doesn't talk to his friends, and I just thought about it. I don't talk to my friends about flat Earth. Thank God my girlfriend's on board, otherwise I'd have to replace her. It's so polarizing that I don't even know where to go with it. But I am open. I am always looking for an opportunity to bring it up with anybody right now. I don't hold back anymore because I believe, as we've discussed offline, that it's one of the most important topics for people to be awake about. There you go.
Yeah, I definitely think this is definitely one of the biggest lies there is, and the programming runs deeper than probably any other lie there is. But I definitely think that, whoever's in, the authority positions, they let this truth out of the bag intentionally. They can use truth to distract us as much as they can use lies. So some people say, "Oh, flat Earth is a psyop to discredit truthers and make us look like crazies." But at the same time, flat Earth could be a psyop and a truth, and they could be using us to distract us because it sure seems like other things are going down right now, and we're coming closer to the economic collapse.
Mark Sargent made a comment when he was on our show saying he related the flat Earth. He was talking about the Truman Show and how you could have animals in a cage and they're not happy, but you put them in a big enough fenced-in environment and they're okay. They hit the fence, they turn around. But if you put humans in an enclosed environment like Truman, as soon as he found the wall, he wanted out. And no matter how big you make it, let's say we'll call it the whole known Earth. As soon as we discover the wall, there's no controlling us. So that's why I think it's one of the most important things, because if people discover that there is possibly something beyond the wall, there's no controlling us. And that might be why they put so much effort into the programming of the ball Earth.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
Well, I'll tell you what, we might as well use that as a segue into the second main topic for tonight. And you've already brought up basically your opinions about it, Jeff, but go into more detail now. This notion that people like Mark Sargent and others, they've gained all of this notoriety very, very quickly. It's been a meteoric rise for people like Mark Sargent. You're saying that you think perhaps he's not giving people all of the truth. And I've said publicly that I think there are two kinds of gatekeepers. There's the unintentional one, which most of us are. Unless you have all of the truth, then you are unintentionally failing to share all the truth with your listeners, because how can you share it with them if you don't know it? So unless you know all of the truth, of course, you're going to fail to tell people everything they need to know because you don't know it. Then there's the intentional gatekeepers whose job is to keep people focused on certain truths and not reach the next level of truths. Do you want to give us as much of your opinion as you care to share about people like Mark Sargent and the way that this flat Earth thing has exploded, what you think is going on behind the scenes?
Well, like I've already said, the first person to introduce me to flat Earth was Mark Sargent, and after I watched his videos, I did what probably a lot of people did, maybe not the smartest thing, but I called him and I spoke to him on the phone, and we spent a couple hours talking. And the one thing that I noticed was he wasn't interested in talking like science. You know, he had all these theories, and he was okay with explaining things by saying, you know, it's LED technology, or, you know, it's this advanced computer system, or this Truman Show dome. And, like, I wasn't interested in any of that. I knew that, you know, the natural world does run on science. So if the Earth's flat, it has to be able to be explained. So that's what I wanted to focus on, was like the science. So I focused on observing the sun, observing the moon, you know, and I wasn't interested in that whole Truman Show dome aspect. And when I came across Matt Boylan, it was very interesting that he said Mark Sargent's a shill because he's trying to tell you that you're trapped in this enclosed world. And that's when Matt Boylan started pushing this infinite flat Earth. And that made sense to me at the time, so I kind of just jumped on the bandwagon, assumed Mark Sargent was, you know, a shill or a gatekeeper. And then I was kind of in the Matt Boylan camp, you know, and that was until he turned on Eric Dubay and started defending Israel and defending Zionism and talking about how he has all these Jewish friends in Hollywood and show business, and they're his clients who buy his art. So that kind of made me lose respect for Matt Boylan. It kind of made me gain respect for Eric Dubay. I don't really disagree with much that he says. We might disagree a little bit on Hitler and some of the facts about World War II, but when it comes to flat Earth, I think Eric Dubay is spot on. So to call him a shill isn't really fair, because he's done, you know, a great job teaching people science of flat Earth, as has Jeranism. He's done a great job. One little fact about Jeranism, he came on the scene almost as fast as Mark Sargent. I know there was a time when I had 100 more subscribers than Jeranism, and now when you look at it, he's probably got, you know, thousands more subscribers than me. So, I mean, he's really blown up too. I think this shill label is being thrown around a little loosely. I don't think Eric Dubay works for the CIA. I don't think Matt Boylan works for the CIA. I don't think this is a psyop. But I definitely think Mark Sargent is some kind of a gatekeeper, because it was his videos that really started to blow up this movement. And if you look at like Google Analytics, I think if you search flat Earth, that search is up like 800% since Flat Earth Clues came out. So I think there's something to be said about that.
You don't think that it's just a chance that he came out just at the right time, because it was coming into more of a mass consciousness, and he made some very good videos and they kind of went viral? I mean, isn't that a possibility? You know,
it's definitely a possibility.
Some people may view him as a gatekeeper, and what he says might be gatekeeping, but I don't look at him as an intentional gatekeeper at all. And he woke me up to it. So, you know, he's opening the gate in my book.
Yeah, and the point that I make to people is, like, I haven't gone out and publicly called anybody in the Flat Earth movement a shill, because the way I see it, if it is the case that we don't live on a spinning ball and it's easy to prove that, then anybody who's sent here to wake people up a little bit, it's like pushing a rock down a mountain. You know, if your job is to gatekeep people and get them focused on Boston or Sandy Hook or 9/11, but pretending that there were planes, that's a pretty easy job of gatekeeping, because you can keep people focused on one event. But if you wake people up to the flat Earth a little bit, then they're going to go and do their own research. And how are you supposed to stop that? So even though Mark Sargent doesn't refer to scientific arguments, I don't want to refer to him as a gatekeeper, because look how many people he has gotten onto flat Earth. He got me onto flat Earth. He got StinkyCash on a flat Earth. If he's a gatekeeper, he's doing a terrible job. Then you've got people like Eric Dubay. I think the biggest criticism that people can make of him is that he talks about the Holocaust and the Jewish question, except that's the opposite of what a gatekeeper does. They're supposed to keep you focused on one thing, not wake you up to other things. Then you've got Jeranism. The biggest criticism that people have made of him has to do with his past, but that has nothing to do with the work that he's doing now. Even if you believe the criticisms of his past, the point is he's still waking people up to the flat Earth now. So I don't see how any of these people can be gatekeepers. All they seem to be doing in their own ways is waking people up to the lies of the heliocentric model. StinkyCash, what say you?
I absolutely agree with that.
No, that's nice and easy. All right, then we'll go around the round table. I don't want to spend too much time talking about this topic, but I thought we better get it off our chest. So, Matrix, I'll throw to you there. Any comments on this question of which leading flat earthers are gatekeeping?
Yeah, well, there's lots of strange things going on in the community, the flat earth and the truth community at the moment, which is to be expected with a subject like this, as big as this. I mean, there are definitely gatekeepers, and the authorities would set up a controlled opposition, to control both sides of the debate. And, for instance, the Flat Earth Society is one such controlled opposition, and they put out, bogus arguments and to misinform people and lead them astray and turn them off the subject. And then you also have like disinfo agents on YouTube who promote false arguments. Someone like Vsauce, with his 9 million subscribers, put out a, is the Earth flat video, and where he appears to investigate this subject, and then uses the false argument of the Earth moving up at 9.8 meters per second and gravity, and you use these sort of straw man arguments to later on go on to ridicule the subject. And he puts on a tinfoil hat and so on. So there are definitely people out there that are trying to discredit the flat Earth subject, and what's happening right now, the awakening to, questioning what science is and questioning the ball Earth, the spinning ball Earth, and so on. But really, it's more about the information rather than the personalities that people should be paying attention to and using their discernment. Many people sort of, lack of a better word, gravitate to celebrities and personalities and fall under their spell. So it's an issue that we're facing when seeking the truth about these matters. Yeah,
I agree. Dirth, I didn't want to spend too much time talking about this topic. Do you have anything that you want to add, or can we move on?
Yeah, no, just real quickly, the one that gets me is a lot of new people, when I wake people up to this, I say, check it out. If they go to the Flat Earth Society, people come back, with the ridiculous arguments they put over there. They are obviously controlled opposition, and then, of course, the morons that will spew the lies, but I don't even want to go there. Go ahead, move on.
All right, I just want to read out a comment from the live chat. We've got more than 40 people watching live, so thanks to everyone for coming out. Stuart Jones says, what about the people that wake others up but then mix truth and bullcrap and lead people down the wrong path in a co-opted movement like Alex Jones? Stuart makes a very good point. That's possible. That's possible with Eric. That's possible with Mark. That's possible with Jeranism or StinkyCash or myself or Dirth or Matrix. Any one of us might have been sent here to do that. Maybe we all were. Maybe none of us were, which is why it just makes sense to focus on the information. If someone's putting out bad info, the easiest thing to do is to disprove their bad info rather than to sit there saying, he's a shill, he's a shill. If someone's a shill, then if their job is disinfo, then find the info they're putting out, prove how it's wrong. That's how you'll make a positive difference. But just accusing people of being shills, I don't think is a useful use of your time or a good way to expose them. So I say to people, listen to all, follow none, make up your own mind, do your own research. And to their credit, Mark Sargent, Eric Dubay, Jeranism, they all say do your own research. And if people do their own research, they're going to find out that the heliocentric model that we're given is complete and utter nonsense. And that's the most important thing here. The rest is all just circus sideshow. So we better move on now that we've got all of that off our chests. Time to get into the real fun of this show. The first thing I want to do, StinkyCash, is give you a chance to go through your best arguments against the spinning ball theory. If we sat you down with some newbies, but we locked you all in a room, they couldn't leave. They had to spend an hour with StinkyCash, and you had to walk them through why you don't believe in spinning ball. How would you try and do it?
Man, you put me on the spot there. Well, here, like I grew up on the Jersey Shore, right? So any kid who's ever been at the beach, you get to the beach, and eventually you start digging a hole, and then your mother will. What does your mother say in that situation? What, are you going to dig to China? So think about this. We're really living on a ball, and there is no up and there is no down. It's all relative. You start digging down to China. If this was, theoretically possible, where you could dig through the center of the ball and go all the way to the other side, through the middle, you'd be digging down. But when you would come out the other end, you'd have to be digging up. You have to come up out of the ground. So you start your digging by going down, but eventually you're going to be digging up out of the ground. So when does down become up on this ball that we live on? Is it at the magical center of the ball that you just have this like flip of consciousness and everything gets reversed? Like, it doesn't make any sense when you really start looking at it. Just like nothing really makes sense. That's why they had to come up with this whole idea of gravity, because if you live on a ball and there is no up and down, how come we don't fly off of it? Oh, gravity. Okay, but if it's spinning, how come I can't feel it? Oh, relativity. So it's just theory on top of theory, and when you really start looking at it and using your own brain, it just makes no sense, and you won't be able to wrap your head around any of it.
I'm completely with you. We'll make this a nice general chat. So Dearth and Matrix, feel free to jump in here. When people are listening, and no doubt there are people listening to this podcast, this episode, and it's their first exposure to people like ourselves talking about this rationally and calmly and civilly while we don't believe in the spinning ball. It's worth going over some of the main arguments that we have against it. I know that you spend a lot of time, StinkyCash, talking about your problems with gravity. Do you want to walk us through when you first started to question what we're told is gravity?
Definitely. So I came across that same, I think it's Vsauce, that guy with the crazy eyes with like 9 million subscribers who made that Flat Earth video, and he used that Flat Earth Society argument about the disk rising to create the effect of gravity. And I guess it was Eric Dubay that explained it the best when he talked about just the laws of density and buoyancy, and how matter of a lighter density rises. This is why hot air rises or helium rises, because hot air and helium are less dense than the surrounding air, so they rise. And just this basic, that's real science. That can't be debunked. That's science. And the only reason why we even need gravity is because on a ball there's no up and down. You need this magical suction force. But on a flat Earth where there is an up and there is a down, like in the reality we live in, and we all know that up and down exists, we don't need this magical explanation for gravity. It's a moot point.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we've been questioning gravity a lot lately, and as the alleged effects of it, and how the planets, supposedly gravitate to one another and are held in place, and how satellites are supposedly in geostationary orbit, and the ISS, and weightlessness in space, and how gravity appears to be a strong force one minute and then to hold the planets in. Yet, on the other hand, you can have zero gravity effects in space. I mean, it's definitely a big part of the discussion. It's all really related to like NASA, what we've been told about the universe as well, and the lack of photos from space. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I actually have this theory. See, if we look at the history of NASA, NASA can be traced back to the Nazi scientists that were brought over from Germany, Operation Paperclip, and it's really, NASA now is a Freemason Zionist operation. Okay, if you ask me, the connections between the Zionists and the Nazis, they all meet at Israel and NASA. And NASA, everyone that's ever walked on the moon is a Freemason. Now, when you look at the Freemason, compass and square with the G in the middle, I have this theory that the G actually stands for gravity, because they just cite gravity whenever they can't explain something. And that's the same thing someone would do with God. If you can't explain something in nature, just say God. Well, that's what they do with gravity. They just say it's gravity for everything. So I think gravity is actually their God. And I've made a few videos pointing this out, that like I have a video where I chop up scenes from the movie Interstellar, where every other word in that movie is gravity or relativity. The whole movie is absolute mind control programming.
Yeah, definitely. Along with the movie Gravity itself, with George Clooney and Sandra Bullock.
Yeah, they released both those movies at the exact same time. Like if one wasn't good enough, here we're going to hit you with two. and then in a few years we're going to hit you with a new Star Wars trilogy, and they release a new space movie every few months just to reinforce the globe model. And when you start looking, just everywhere in the world, you see globes everywhere. It's everywhere. Even like if you're on Facebook and you want to click your notifications, it's a little globe. And if you want to use your emoji button on your iPhone, it's a globe. And the globe appears in everything. It's in the news, it's in sports, it's in advertising, it's just everywhere. And that's why this is such a hard pill to swallow. The programming runs so deep.
Jeff, you just said a few moments ago, and the shills are actually attacking me right now, that everyone that walked on the moon was a Freemason. I think you might have meant everyone that allegedly walked on the moon.
Yes, everyone that allegedly walked on the moon. I'm sorry about that.
No problem. So as far as gravity, we're told that the Earth, gravity is the bigger the mass, the more the gravity. The Earth bulges at the equator, so there should be more mass there. You should weigh more, but you don't. The Earth is an oblique pear shape, so you'd weigh different amounts. Why don't all the women move up north? Because they'd weigh less, and that would make them feel better. It's absolutely insane. The thing that gets me is, the massive gravity of the sun holds us in this, elliptical orbit around it. But the moon happens to be far enough away from the sun and close enough to the Earth that the Earth has trapped it in its gravity, and the sun's gravity must have no effect on the moon, because when the moon's traveling away from the sun and comes around the Earth and travels towards the sun again, it goes at the same speed.
It all contradicts itself.
Yeah,
it's silly.
It's so silly, it's embarrassing that I ever believed it.
And you said they pretty much just say gravity is caused from a great mass attracts objects of a smaller mass. So I would imagine that the force of gravity is all dependent on the size of the planet, right, or the structure. So if they say the Earth is 4 times bigger than the moon, look at the rocket power that they had to use to get off the Earth, and compare that to the shots of them leaving the moon. It just doesn't make any sense. How would they have enough power to even take off from the moon?
And that's if you believe that rockets can work in zero or low atmosphere. And there are people out there who still think that rockets can work in space. And you ask them, hold on, how would a rocket work in space? And a lot of people have never actually thought about this. You can see the cognitive dissonance on their face. And when it comes to gravity, the official equation for gravity, it's actually it's an amazingly simple one. It is that the force of gravity equals the mass of the first object times the mass of the second object over the distance between the two squared, or something approximating this. Now, to know what the force of gravity is in that case, you need to know the mass of the Earth. Now, how on earth, how are you going to weigh what the Earth, how would anybody know what the mass of the Earth is? Well, they've got a very simple way of working this out. They assume that their model is correct. They assume that they know the mass of the other objects in the solar system, and then they work out the mass of the Earth based on the others. Now, this is circular reasoning. If you study Logic 101, this is what you would call circular reasoning, but they need to employ that to determine the mass of the Earth. Now, I put to you guys, I want your opinion here, StinkyCash. Anyone who actually believes that we can know the mass of the Earth, this is a person that's lost their mind.
I completely agree. And the only people that will claim they know such a thing would be these professors like the Brian Coxes of the world or the Neil deGrasse Tysons of the world. They act like they just know everything. And to get back to what you said, how could a rocket work in space where there's no air? I mean, air is a fluid, like liquid. You need to displace it to move. So it's kind of like saying a speedboat would work with no water.
Exactly.
You know? It makes no sense.
There's a whole bunch of videos that I think there are a lot of recent ones where kids have done experiments where they've created a balloon, blowing air through a straw and put it in a vacuum, and there's no thrust at all whatsoever. So it's simply proven that rockets do not work in a vacuum. And also, we all know how strong a vacuum is. Like, just take your vacuum and stick it to your skin. It hurts. Or, we're told if a BB hole, a pebble goes through the space station, it's going to suck all the air out. Well, the vacuum's so strong, why doesn't it suck all the air off the planet, which has no barrier? Or is it the magic forceful gravity that can defeat the vacuum? I mean, it's laughable. I'm embarrassed that they ever believed it. I said that earlier.
Yeah, I'm kind of embarrassed in myself. It was like right in front of our face the whole time. None of it made sense. And it's funny because when you're a kid and they're teaching you this globe science, it doesn't make sense to anybody, But they keep driving the point home to you. They got that globe next to the teacher's desk, in every classroom you're in. And eventually, even though it makes no sense to you, you're going to buy into it and you're just going to accept it. You're going to say, I'm just not smart enough. You're going to start doubting yourself and you're just going to accept it and you're going to start repeating it.
Well, StinkyCash, one of the things that I've noticed doing this Baller Skeptic Roundtable, every one of our guests has told us that there were times when they were at school, either primary school or secondary school, where they did have a doubt about the model and they just put it to the back of their mind and forgot about it. I know that was the case with me. Can you remember any times when you were at school where there was something that didn't sit well with you? Maybe you asked a teacher, maybe you didn't. But now looking back, you think to yourself, actually, the younger me was right. He should have, if only he knew to keep questioning his teachers.
No, well, it's kind of the opposite for me. Like I said, when you first learn about the globe, it doesn't make any sense to you, right? But if you're a person with a high IQ and a high, capacity for learning, as they teach you false information, you have a high capability for learning false information. So, and as someone who prides himself on like being smart and having knowledge, you absorb all the false knowledge and you just regurgitate it your whole life. And you think just because the sun is 93 million miles away and a simple fact that's not even a fact, you think you're smart because you can regurgitate this nonsense. But it's all a lie. You got to question these things because who would have thought that your teachers were lying to you all these years? And you even think the science teachers didn't even know they were lying to you. They're just as brainwashed as the rest of us. They don't realize they're teaching false science.
And what could a science teacher do? Suppose there was a physics or a high school chemistry teacher listening to this podcast right now, and suppose they went and looked into supposed rockets in space theory. They went and looked into supposed theory about gravitational force, and suppose they realized that this actually was all nonsense. What are they supposed to do? Are they supposed to quit their job and go and do something else with their lives? Probably not. Are they going to go to work and tell the kids what they've discovered? Of course not. It's in their interests to go along with the heliocentric model that they've been taught and put all of this to the back of their mind. And StinkyCash, could you blame your teachers if they heard you right now and they thought, gee, he might have a point here. I'm just going to ignore this and pretend I never heard this. Could you really blame them?
Oh, you can't blame them. Like I said, they're probably more brainwashed than the rest of us because they pride themselves on knowing this stuff, and they learned it from a teacher or professor that was just as brainwashed as them. And and what are you gonna do? You're gonna come out and say, I think the Earth is flat. You're gonna be shunned in society. They might put you in a straitjacket if you're a science teacher that says that.
Absolutely. Well, I'd like to think that I haven't had much of an ego since I was about 20, and I learned that Osama bin Laden and the 19 dudes with box cutters story was nonsense, but I'd completely believed it for the 6 years prior to then. At that point, I realized I'm not as smart as I think I am, and ever since then, I've been more than happy to prove my former self wrong. I think a lot of people out there, they hold on to these beliefs, and it's ego that stops them from realizing that they've been conned. I'll throw to you there, Dirth. Have you found it enlightening at all, or has it been for you easy to let go of your old beliefs?
I believe I've become very good at it. I'm accused of, believing everything's a conspiracy quite often, but I'm happy to be proven wrong. Just show me the evidence. I have no vested interest in any view. I just want the truth. Talk about science teachers. When I was heavily into 9/11 stuff, I brought a book to a physics teacher at our local high school, who I was friendly with, from being there years ago. And I woke him up to 9/11, and he told me offline that he sees it, he agrees it, but he still teaches the physics that don't make sense. You know, the reason I brought it to him, a student told me that he was talking about how the towers came down and explaining it in science, quotation marks. And I showed him that's not what happened, but he cannot discuss it in school because he wants his retirement.
People do things for a paycheck, and it's very easy to sell out, you know. And I think I heard John, you say that you believe in no planes theory.
Yeah, well, I'm hoping towards the end of this show, I want to move on from, not move on, I want to move on to different topics from the Flat Earth. So I'm thinking the last 15 or 20 minutes of today's show, we'll talk about some of your other work, because I know that you've done work on no planes, and I think it's really important work. We'll just stick to this topic of arguments against the ball Earth at the moment, though. And we're talking about how basically, if they can indoctrinate us for 12 or 13 years, they say, this is science, you give us the correct answers, and you get good marks, you'll go to a good university, you're a smart person. It builds up ego. And so anyone who finds out that they were wrong, it's not just that they were wrong, it's that the way that they identify as a person, as an intellectual, as a academic or whatever, that's wrong too. And for most people, it's too much to let go of. I'll throw to you there, Matrix. Has it been difficult for you to let go of your old beliefs about the ball? Have you found it easy? Why do you think that some people are able to let go of the ball easier than others? I think his internet might just be dropping out. Well, I'll tell you what we'll do.
No,
you go, Matt.
Sorry. For me, it was perhaps easier than some other people. You know, when I woke up about 5 years ago to the 9/11 deception and, you know, the various other conspiracies, you know, like the moon landings and so on, and, you know, the money system and that, you know, and how the media were lying to us and so on. It just really opened my mind up to question. And for me, you know, I've always believed in a creator, and you know, not agreed with the official science of a Big Bang and Darwinian evolution. I've always thought those to be, you know, seriously flawed. So for me, it was just another wow. You know, once I started looking at the NASA fakery, it was an easy step to start questioning, you know, the shape of the Earth and you know, the related science and physics, you know, to do that. So it's, you know, it was easier for me perhaps than some other people.
Well, I think with a lot of people, it will simply be a matter of understanding that they were lied to about the moon landings. Then they'll start looking at the Mars rover and this New Horizon passage of Pluto, and they'll start realizing that all the photos from that is all CGI, and it'll be a step-by-step process. Now, some people will stumble on the first step and never go further, but I think for anyone who's genuinely open-minded, whose ego doesn't dictate their beliefs and their thinking patterns, this will be almost a sequential process of realizing, well, if they lie about this, what would stop them lying about that? They look at that, realize that's a lie, they move on, and eventually you realize nothing that NASA has said should be taken at face value. Everything should be questioned, and once you take away NASA's supposed photos of the ball, what evidence do you have for the ball? And then you'll end up listening to shows like this one and hopefully enjoying your time. We're up to 60 people watching live. Thanks to everyone for coming out. StinkyCash, I wanted to get you to spend 10 or 15 minutes tonight telling us about your work to do with the moon and the sun. If people go to your channel, they'll see that you've put a lot of time into explaining a flat Earth model and how the moon and the sun work. If you were walking someone through this for the first time and they'd be saying, well, if we're on a flat plane, how come in Brisbane right now it's 11 o'clock and it's pitch black, but over in New York it's 9 o'clock and the sun's out? Can you walk the listeners through your understanding of how all this works?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the first things I did after discovering flat Earth is I wanted to prove it with science, right? I didn't want to explain away things with, you know, magical LED domes and stuff. So the first thing I did was I turned the lights off in my apartment and I grabbed a flashlight. And anyone who's ever done this, you know, you shine a flashlight on a dark wall, it creates a circle of light, and then it's surrounded by darkness. I said, well, there you go. You can make day and night on a flat surface. If the sun is much smaller and much closer, this is the effect it would have. So I drew my own little flat Earth map. I think this was in one of my first or second flat Earth videos, and I just showed how the sun can go around in a circle like a spotlight and create day and night. And the circle pattern going clockwise, just like a clock face, right? That's where we get a clock face from. Creates the time zones. That's why where you are, it's nighttime, and where I am, it's 9 o'clock in the morning, and the sun's just coming up. So I thought back to some of the things I had known about the sun. Like if you watch the Zeitgeist documentary, which I do believe is some kind of controlled opposition, but if you watch Zeitgeist, he talks about in that first scene how the sun sets further into the south as we approach the winter solstice or the December solstice, and then it starts to head back and sets further northwest as we head towards the June solstice. And when you look at how the sun circles work on the flat Earth map, I have videos that explain this with great visuals. In December, during the winter solstice, the sun circle is over the Tropic of Capricorn, and that's why the sun appears to set further into the south. And then as we get closer to June 21st, the sun circles get tighter and tighter. At the equinox, they're over the equator, right? That was a kind of like an eye opener, right? The equinox, equator, that made a lot more sense than the globe model. And then as we reach the summer solstice, the sun is circling over the Tropic of Cancer, which explains why the sun sets further into the northwest, or at least where I am in New Jersey. So everything that you can observe in reality fits with the flat Earth map and how the sun works on the flat Earth map.
Good explanation. I might see if we can get a screen share up of one of your videos so that you can walk us through it. How long did it take you to get your mind around the moon and the sun on the flat disk? Because one of the problems that I've seen, StinkyCash, is that people will be exposed to the flat Earth theory. They'll have a problem with one aspect of it or another aspect of it, and they'll immediately throw it away without taking the time to get their mind around it. And we talk about people changing their worldviews, you know. If you didn't know that Boston or Sandy Hook were fake, and someone shows you footage that shows clearly that Boston was fake, you have to change your worldview from the media wouldn't lie or they couldn't get away with it to, of course they would lie, of course they'd get away with it, who's going to stop them? That's a change of worldview. Well, when we're talking about flat Earth, this is literally a change of worldview. After 12 or 13 years of school, after 20, 30, 40, 50 years, whatever the case may be, of TV reinforcement of the ball model, it's not going to be easy to suddenly leave that behind. And I think a lot of people, they don't spend enough time trying to get their head around the moon and the sun and the other aspects of flat Earth. Can you walk the listeners through how long it took you to get your mind around some of these aspects of flat Earth?
Well, I figured out the sun almost right away. It probably took me a day to kind of come up with this theory about the sun, and then you go online and you realize there are other people pushing the same information. And I came up with my conclusion independently. So that just kind of reinforced my belief system. So to me, you know, we see the sun every day. The pattern the sun makes is the same almost every single day. And it's very easy to figure out the sun, especially when you start looking at the North Pole time-lapse footage and how the sun circles around and never appears to set, and how I couldn't find any South Pole 24-hour daylight footage. Okay, all the footage on YouTube that allegedly shows a 24-hour daylight period at the so-called South Pole, it all appears to be fake to me. So I have no evidence for that. On the other hand, the moon, I still haven't figured out. The moon appears to be the biggest mystery of all this. And the moon's pattern, to me, is kind of random. And I haven't been able to crack it yet. And I don't think anybody else has the moon figured out 100% yet.
So you spent a bit of time trying to get your head around it. Would you agree that some people, when they're first exposed to this, they don't spend enough time just trying to use their mind to understand this alternative theory?
I think this is a great way to exercise and strengthen your mind, because in the beginning, I wasn't a flat earther, but I decided, hey, I'm going to try to build a model, a flat earth model, and make it work, where I could show somebody and say, hey, look, this is how the world would work if it was flat and everything is accounted for. You know, the days, the seasons, shorter days, longer days, all that stuff. And that's what my goal was. And as I started using my brain, maybe for the first time in my life, you know, and trying to piece this together, I just became a flat earther. The ball made no sense, and the flat earth just started looking better and better.
Hey, as far as the 24 hours of light at the South Pole and quotation marks, you know, if you look at the flat Earth model, which makes more sense, you know, 1,000 times over than the globe model, there is no South Pole, and a lot of people can't wrap their heads around that. Where our North Pole is our magnetic center of our known world, and any direction that you travel from the North Pole is south. And you go to that outer ring, and it keeps on going on either forever or for a limited distance, but there is no South Pole. Is that your belief also, Jeff?
That's my belief. And I did some work on this. This is one of the biggest things people need to understand is how directionals work on the flat earth. Because a lot of, you know, doubters, they'll say, you know, hey, there's no east or west on a flat earth, or, you know, how does this work? You have to understand that the center is north, so opposite the center is south. And if you're moving in a direction where you're not getting any closer to north and any closer to south, then you'd be
east or west.
You're moving east or west, either clockwise or counterclockwise with an even radius around the North Pole.
And to the traveler who's sailing around the Earth or flying around the Earth at equidistant a mark from the North Pole, they would feel like they're going in a straight line.
They would have no idea, and they're not really even trusting their own senses. They're using a compass, which only works on a flat Earth.
Right, and what's amazing is we're told, you know, that the compass, which has a little bit of magnetism on one end of it, points to the north because it's so strong. And when you're in the south, it still points north because the South Pole is so weak. Well, even if that was true, that the South Pole is so weak and the North Pole is magic like gravity and can counteract it, wouldn't it pull the compass down towards the floor if you're in Antarctica rather than point it, you know, around the globe? It doesn't make any sense at all.
That was one of the first things I thought of, and I said to myself, like, here's another little proof, like another little, just a piece, right? I said, well, what would happen to a compass? How would a compass react if you were standing on the exact magnetic north, right? I thought it would spin, right? It would just spin out of control if you were standing on the true north. But here's the problem. They tell us that magnetic north is constantly changing, which kind of makes it impossible for anyone to do this experiment, because good luck finding where magnetic north is at any given time.
Right.
Now, what I'm doing, StinkyCash, is I'm sharing your video, Flat Earth, where you explain with your torch how the sun would work. A lot of people, when they first hear of Flat Earth, they think, well, it's a big giant ball up there that's shooting light in every direction. So if it was a flat plane, then we'd see the sun all day, every day. You're one of the people who subscribe to the notion that, in fact, the sun is more akin to a torch. It's shooting more of a direct beam of light down upon the flat plane. While I've got this video playing in the background, I've got it on mute. Do you want to walk us through how you first conceptualized this? Was this something that another flat earther got you to think about? How'd you get onto this one?
This just came to me. I mean, we've all used flashlights, right? I drew this little sketch in about, it took me about 2 seconds. And I turned my lights off, because this is what science is. To me, this was just a basic little science experiment. Like, is it possible? And if you look at, and at this point, I didn't even know about how the sun went from the Tropic of Cancer to Capricorn. All I knew was that it circled around, and that, like here, I'm showing that as the sun gets further away, the circle of light, the coverage of light gets bigger. And the closer the flashlight would get, the smaller the coverage would be. And I said that could be a reason for why we have longer and shorter days. Because in the summer, the sun is actually further away, but because it creates a better angle, you have a bigger circle of light. And in the winter, the sun's actually closer. But because the angle's no good, because it's out further towards the Tropic of Capricorn, that's what causes a shorter day and wintertime.
as any to bring up one objection that Jordan Rains in the live chat brought up. And again, I've made this point before. I'll make it another time. Even if we can find 2 or 3 or 5 solid objections to certain flat Earth models, it doesn't mean that we should believe in the ball. There's this false dichotomy out there of, well, if I can find 1 or 2 problems with flat Earth, I have to believe in spinning ball. Well, there's dozens, if not hundreds, of problems with spinning ball. So you can't just say, well, I've got a problem with flat Earth, I'm going to believe in spinning ball. That doesn't make. If you want to do that, that's fine, but don't pretend that you're being serious. You're having a hopeless devotion to the ball Earth. So when I point this out, this isn't me saying that I'm going back to spinning ball, far from it. But Jordan Rains in the live chat makes the point that supposedly the longest day in a city on the southernmost tip of South America, I forget the name of the city. He spells it Ushuaia. I've seen it spelled very differently to that. But regardless of what the city is, apparently the longest day in summertime is something like 17 hours. Now, how on the flat Earth model, how could one city get that much sunlight? Is this an objection that you've heard before, StinkyCash?
This is an objection I've heard before, and it's one that's hard for me to answer, and especially because I don't live in the southern hemisphere and I've never witnessed it. But like you said, I came up with this very early on in my flat Earth awakening. If this is wrong, that doesn't mean the Earth's not flat. That just means I don't understand how the sun works, like I thought I did.
Yeah, exactly right. And for me, this is one. I've got 2 or 3 other objections to the flat Earth model. But originally, I couldn't get my head around sunset. I thought, if we're not on a ball, how can the sun set? It took me weeks of reading other people's explanations, trying in my mind to get my head around it before I understood, it's just a matter of perspective, the vanishing point. That actually does make sense to me, and I was fine. It took me a while to get my head around it. So these objections that I have to the flat Earth model, it might just be that I haven't spent enough time thinking about them, or it might be that they're legitimate objections. But even if I can completely debunk the leading flat Earth models, it doesn't mean that we're on a spinning ball. And I want to constantly repeat this because I think a lot of people, they want to believe in the ball, so they're looking for any problem with the flat Earth model. But that is not sensible reasoning. It's not scientific. Yeah. If you want to believe in the ball, you have to get over all of the objections to the ball, and we've only gone over a few of them tonight so far. I'll throw to you there, Matrix. While I've got this in the background, this work by StinkyCash with his conceptualization of the flat Earth. Have you heard this objection about the 17-hour days in South America, and have you found any good explanations for it? And maybe Matrix still isn't with us. We'll go to you there, Dirth. Have you heard this objection? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, John, stop sharing that. I want to bring up a picture, and I have a possible explanation that makes a lot of sense to me. I don't know if people can see my video, my animation. This is just our standard flat Earth map, and when they have 17-hour days, it's my winter, your summer down there. So the sun is traveling out here, and because of the vanishing point, the sun will go behind mountains, that are in the distance. As the sun goes away, it gets closer and closer to the horizon. So any landmass will start blocking the sunlight. But when you're out over the water, when the sun is out over the water out here, I think you guys, hold on, so you can see my mouse. When the sun is out here, it has a clear shot with no land masses to South America. So you're going to have a lot of twilight in the morning and in the afternoon, and there's your 17 hours right there. So there's nothing blocking the sun when it's out here. So you got morning, noon, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8 p.m., 9 p.m. It's still got a direct shot with no landmass blocking it. So there's your 17-hour days, and that makes perfect sense to me. The other, what we were talking about, how the sun goes around. This is one of my go-to videos that when people say, how can day and night go, I always bring up this video. Can you see that? This is StinkyCash's video called "The Sun Explained," Flat Earth, the Sun Explained, and it shows that each month of the year the ball gets tighter. You're going into my summer now in the north because it's going over America, which is here, And as the year progresses, it goes out farther. And then when it follows this yellow line, you got your 17 hours of sunlight. You can even count them. Each one of these is an hour for unobstructed view of the sun. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I'm completely on board with night and day on the flat Earth model, no problems at all. But this issue of and I don't know if it is true that there's a city or a town in southern South America that has 17-hour days. But for the time being, I'm happy to go with that to see if we can find an explanation for it. Your explanation, Dirth, I'm not really sure if I'm following you there. If you're saying that we could see that in southern tip of South America, they could see the sun for 17 hours, that would mean that what, for only 6 hours of the day, so for 1/4 of the rotation, hold on, we'll go to press present.
No, hold on.
On Google
Let me just show you. If you see this animation that I have up there, I just paused it. The yellow line is in January when supposedly the 17-hour days are. So here is the sunrise where my mouse is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So, you know, you could have dawn from about here and the sun goes all the way around. It's not going to be bright sunlight, but the sun is not obstructed by anything but atmosphere. And, you know, what they call daylight is not total darkness.
Well, all right then, Dirth. That with your theory, we could prove or disprove that. What we need to know is at what time does this town in Southern America? At what time do they first see the sun, and where is the sun? Like when they first see the sun, where is it on the Earth? Where is it directly above? And when they last see the sun, where is it directly above? And if the answers are that it's directly above the southern tip of Africa when they first see it, and it's directly above the eastern coast of Australia when they last see it, then your theory would make sense. However, if they first see the sun when it's to the east of Africa, or if they last see it when it's already across Australia, how would you explain that?
That would be something I'd have to consider. I don't expect that result, but I'm willing to see it if that's the case. So I don't know how we prove that. We have to put somebody in South America and get them on the phone.
Hey, Dave, pause the video right there.
Okay.
Yeah, I actually have a video I made right after this one where it was called, I think, Sunrise, Sunsets Explained, and I did those measurements like John was talking about, but I only did it for two northern hemisphere U.S. cities. I did Newark, New Jersey, where I lived, and I did Los Angeles, I think. I didn't do a southern hemisphere city, but apparently the southern hemisphere cities would have to be able to see the sun longer than the northern hemisphere cities for that 17-hour day to even be possible. I've heard another explanation out there, like if you're Christian, like I am, and you take the Bible and Genesis and creation literally, God said, "Let there be light," before he created the sun. So there is this idea that the sun is not the only light source, that there is light, and that God separated the light, the day from the night.
Jeff, what is your, if you had to pick a guess, like counting jelly beans in a jar, how far away from the Earth would you say the sun is? I know that a lot of flat earthers go with this 3,000-mile observation, but I think it's much. Sorry about that, guys. I think it's much closer, but I don't have the proof of it yet.
Yeah, I've kind of just gone with the accepted theory that it's 3,000 miles away and roughly 37 miles across. I have no way of proving this either way. I have definitely had times where I said, you know what, I think that's actually closer than 3,000 miles. But like, what am I going to do to even prove that? That's not something I could even spend time with.
The videos of weather balloons going up and rockets going up, if you notice, They're all shot during some point during daylight, but when they get up to 70 miles or so, supposedly 70 miles, the sun and if the moon's in the shot always appear off to the side, almost like their angle almost changes to a 90-degree angle from the perspective of the camera. If it was 93 million miles away, you'd see zero change in the angle from the Earth to 73 miles. If it was 3,000 miles away, it would only be tiny bit of a difference, and you would see the sun above you if it was noon when it was taken off. But I have not seen a high altitude video yet where the sun wasn't straight off to the side.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. I think the one thing we can all agree on is that there's zero chance that it's 93 million miles away.
That's true.
Yeah, there are definitely problems with, way more problems with the globe Earth model. And when you come up with a problem like this regarding the time, the time of sunrise and sunset in, I think it's Ushuaia, Argentina, and they supposedly have 17 hours. It's one of the reasons I was at the beginning of the show. I was, talking about the flat Earth model and the globe Earth model, and the Tropic of Capricorn and Tropic of Cancer and the equator. For me, trying to figure out this conundrum to do with the southern hemisphere time, the daytime, and so on. It's something still to be figured out. I mean, how it works. I believe that the maps are wrong. I think the time zones are also all over the place. When you look into the time zones and who created them, they were created by the CIA. You go online and time zones zigzag left and right all over the place. Which really don't make much sense when you'd expect them to follow the longitudinal lines and so on. So I think that, this is a conundrum to figure out. I mean, whether the sun is higher in the sky, lower in the sky, where how things work, and where is it? How can this be accounted for? So that's for me when we're looking at things like the tilt of the Earth, the 23.4 degree tilt, and how the Earth maintains its axis, the way it's lined up around the sun. It doesn't tilt towards the sun; it just keeps its axis due to the conservation of angular momentum. And for me, there's many problems with the tilt doing that. Every 6 months, because of that preservation of angular momentum and tilt, the Earth should every 6 months be a midday should turn into midnight, and the moon phases would also be off. So there's big problems with the globe Earth model, and for me the sun is definitely not 93 million miles away. We should be really getting 12 hours of day, 12 hours of night all over the Earth, except for the poles. And the whole tilt thing really is I think is a big key of the deception here that they employ on us all.
I think that was a throw to you there, Stinky, but that's all right. Look, what we'll have to do is we're going to have to look into this objection about that southern town in South America, because if we're being honest, I mean, there are so many problems with the spinning ball. We've brought them up. People can either accept them or refuse to acknowledge the problems with spinning ball. But if we're being consistent, we have to acknowledge the problems with the flat Earth model. You've given your explanation, Dirth. I'm going to spend some time looking into the time and date to see what the official explanation of that is. But again, I'll repeat this. Even if we can find some serious objections to the leading flat Earth models, A, it doesn't mean that flat Earth model is wrong. It might just be the one that we're working on isn't correct. And B, until we can explain the many problems with spinning ball, it doesn't make sense to believe in spinning ball. Now, some people will say, well, if you don't believe in the leading flat Earth models and you don't believe in the spinning ball model, then what do you believe in? I just believe in what I can prove. That's what any sensible person does. That's what having healthy skepticism is all about. Looking for the evidence when you find it, analyzing it, accepting that which is good, rejecting that which is bad, and continually searching. And I would like to think that the people involved in the so-called truth community online, that there are still some of them who were here for the truth, who are still here for the truth, and the truth is only that which you can prove. And the spinning ball model can't be proven. It's pseudoscience. Gravity doesn't make sense. You cannot weigh the Earth. How come when the moon is on the opposite side of the Earth to the sun, it doesn't get sucked into Earth? I mean, there's just so many problems. We could spend the whole night going through them, but I think we've spent enough time. with you, Stinky Cash, before you got into your flat Earth stuff, you were also doing some other good work. I know that you took a trip to Israel, so we'll make that the next topic for tonight. Do you want to walk us through the trip to Israel, some of the things you learned about it, how it relates to all of this? The floor is yours.
Yeah, sure. I'm probably the first YouTuber to ever pretend to be a Jew and take an undercover trip to Israel. And so let me I can explain myself a little better. There's a program out there that's funded by, rich Zionists, like they say Sheldon Adelson, the casino mogul, that he makes huge donations. I have a feeling it's the Rothschilds that fund a lot of this operation. But it's a program called Taglit Birthright Israel. And they essentially offer a free 10-day trip to anybody who claims to be Jewish. And you could take this free 10-day trip to Israel. It's valued at over $5,000. And you're with a group of kids, between the ages of 18 and 26. I just turned 26, so I was 25 at the time. I was the oldest one in the group. And essentially, you're in this group with about 40 people, and you're on a bus the whole time, traveling throughout Israel. And it's just a pro-Israel, pro-Zionist propaganda trip where they brainwash, young, like Jewish Americans into supporting Israel. And everything is pro-Israel. You don't meet one Muslim while you're there. The only Muslims that you do come across are the Bedouin, who live in tents. So that's how they want to portray Muslims while you're there. They set you up with about 8 Israeli Defense Force soldiers to come join the group, and they're I found that all 8 of the soldiers that were on our group were all these really good-looking, funny, and likable, young kids. So I feel like that was another form of propaganda where they, portray the IDF in this brilliant light. That way you become friends with some people in the IDF, and you go back home to America, and you tell everybody how great the IDF is and how great Israel is. And the whole trip is propaganda, and they actually sit you through propaganda sessions with known propagandists, like this one man whose name is Neil Lazarus, who we spent 2 hours just listening to pro-Zionist propaganda. And while we were doing these things, I had my cell phone in my pocket recording everything they were saying. And I've made a few videos where I share these recordings so people can hear the propaganda for themselves and hear how bad it is. This trip, which is 10 days long, they use cult brainwashing tactics on the kids. Like known tactics like sleep deprivation, separation from society, no contact with your parents. You're forced to do every single activity. Everything's in groups. So they use these cult brainwashing tactics to literally to brainwash kids. And I was watching. I was awake. I knew what was going on, so it had no effect on me. But I was watching it happen to all the young kids around me, and it was just really astonishing the lengths they'll go to.
Normally, people like David have so much to say. Tonight, we have a bit of dead air. Apologies to the listeners for that. So, Stinky Cash, you went on this trip to Israel, and you've already explained that this is funded by somebody, maybe the Rothschilds, maybe other people. The idea is to get Americans. I know they do the same thing with Australians. In fact, I think it's pretty much anyone around the world, if you have Jewish heritage that you can one way or another, you can go on these trips. A friend of mine took the trip, and I try not to talk about Israel with him because I know that he went through experiences on his trip, on his birthright trip, that have stayed with him emotionally. Like he went through, like they'd be taking a part of their tour, and these sirens would go off, and they'd be like, "You're under rocket attacks," and they'd all have to go and hide in these bunkers that apparently the buildings have over there, and they all genuinely believe they were under attack, and this has an emotional effect on you. So my friend now truly believes that the Arabs are shooting rockets into Israel, and all the evidence in the world won't disprove that to him because he's emotionally experienced the fear of attack. To him, it's completely real. No one will be able to tell him differently. And I wonder if you went through any of these rocket attacks yourself.
Well, every single building in Israel, every hotel we stayed at, they all have bomb shelters. But the rockets, they're not coming into Israel. They're going out. So they're going to Gaza and they're going to the West Bank. Okay. But the biggest problem is that these Jews are some of the most brainwashed people out there. and they're actually being used and deceived and manipulated. They don't realize that the higher ups, they don't know the truth. You know, they believe they're God's chosen people, and they believe that that's their land, and they've been brainwashed by the people they love the most, like their parents and their grandparents. So it's such an emotional issue that, you know, good luck convincing a Jew of the truth. It's very hard. It hits too close to home for them.
Well, I think it's hard to convince anyone of the truth when they've been indoctrinated otherwise, Jew or otherwise. And I know that you've done a lot of videos, especially before your Flat Earth stuff, dealing with the Talmud and Zionism. Very briefly, when did you first become aware of some of the sick and disgusting stuff that's in the Talmud? Was it something that someone told you when you were younger? Did you find out later on through YouTube? How did you come to know what you know?
No, it was like when I said I woke up around last June when I was investigating Kennedy. And then that rabbit hole led me to look into World War II, because there's a great documentary out there called JFK to the Bush Connection, where it's this guy, John Henke, who essentially, he connects George H.W. Bush and his father, Prescott Bush, to Nazis and the JFK assassination. So when you start looking at World War II, which they teach you everything about World War II, all the false history they teach you about World War II in school, and they drive the Holocaust lie down your throat from a very young age. But they don't teach you a lot about World War I or why World War I even took place, because if they taught you that, then you would most likely piece together the Zionist connections and the Zionist agenda behind both world wars. If they taught you about the Balfour Declaration, which essentially named the land of Palestine a future home for the Jews in 1917, and then you start going through history and you realize that Israel has no chance of being formed without the Holocaust, and that the Holocaust actually served Zionist agendas. And you can even look up the 1933 transfer agreement between the Zionists and the Nazis. They partnered up. They were in agreement that they were going to ship Jews out of Germany and send them to Palestine. So that's really what woke me up to Zionism, is just seeing the Israel motive behind both world wars. And then when I went to Israel, I started learning about, you know, Saturn worship, the black cube. While we were there, they taught us about Kabbalah, you know, in a very good light. You know, they had this artist, I think his name was Avraham Levinstein or something, and he's this Kabbalah artist, and they make Kabbalah seem like it's part of Judaism, which, you know, it really isn't. It's definitely some kind of dark art. I haven't really looked into it, but yeah, that's I kind of lost my train of thought there.
Well, we're up to more than 70 people watching live, and a lot of them want us to talk about no planes. I promise that we will. StinkyCash has made videos about this topic, so we'll get onto that soon. Just focusing on this Zionism, Jewish question, Israel, these sorts of topics. It's interesting, isn't it, that at school, certainly in my country, very few people are taught about the transfer agreement, the Havara agreement that you referred to there from 1933, when the Hitler administration made a deal to send the Jews who didn't want to stay in Germany to what was then British-mandated Palestine, what we now call Israel. They don't learn about the Balfour Declaration that you just referred to there, where Germany, who didn't start World War I, war was declared upon Germany both in World War I and World War II. They were winning for the first 2 years. All of a sudden, there's this Balfour Declaration where, was it Minister Balfour from England, made a deal that if they were to win the war, they would create a British-mandated Palestine in what used to be the Ottoman Empire. Remember, the Ottoman Empire was in World War I. My country, Australia, we fought on the side of Great Britain against the Ottoman Empire. Why? Well, the young men of my country 100 years ago thought that they were going off to fight for a good cause. Well, what kind of sane person, when they know the facts now, thinks that that was a good cause? So the Balfour Declaration gets signed. All of a sudden, Germany, who was winning a war that they didn't start, now they've got another enemy on their case. Now America enters the war late. They never taught me why America entered that war late. There's so much of history that they don't teach us at school, and yet I still have people trying to tell me, well, they know we must be on a spinning ball because they learned that at school. What does it take for people to realize that school isn't here to make you smarter?
And just follow the timeline, right? They first discover oil in Iran I think in 1908, right? So that's pretty much the first time we took an interest in the Middle East because at that time, J.P. Morgan and Thomas Edison's electricity were replacing J.D. Rockefeller's kerosene to light up America. So Rockefeller needed, a new use for oil. So he realized that when you refine oil into, crude into kerosene, this byproduct that they used to throw away into the Ohio River is actually gasoline. And gasoline could be used to fuel Henry Ford's cars. So for the first time, they discover oil in the Middle East, and now the Middle East is important. So then they create the privately owned central bank, the Federal Reserve, in 1913. Then they create the 16th Amendment, which allows them to tax incomes to pay the interest on the debt to this privately owned bank. And then for absolutely no reason, they tell us it was because Franz Ferdinand was shot, but we all know that was, a lie. So World War I breaks out, which forces everybody to borrow from these privately owned central banks, and it was all about, like you said, World War I, the real motive behind World War I was to take down the Ottoman Empire who controlled the Middle East. And as soon as they did that, they cut up the Middle East. Anywhere you see a straight line in the Middle East, that's where the British and the French were cutting it all up and dividing it into territories.
Yep, exactly right. Now, you know this history, I know this history, hopefully many of our listeners do. I recommend that if they haven't heard any of this before and it all sounds out there, just go and look into it for yourself. It's amazing what we're not taught at school. We'll focus on this topic for a few more minutes there. Dirth, do you have anything to add?
No, this is very, very interesting. I mean, when you made the comment that they don't teach, I forget the exact comment about what we're taught in school. I don't believe any of the history we're taught. I mean, everything we're taught in school, I'm going back and looking at it, and I can't find any of it that's true. It's
mind-bending. Dave, the first thing we're taught as a kid is Columbus sailed the ocean blue in 1492 to prove the Earth was round.
And they showed it to us on a globe.
Right.
Before we're taught what 1 + 1 is, we're taught that the Earth is a globe.
And what's funny is then you get a little older and a little bit more advanced, and they say, oh, well, Columbus didn't really sail to prove the Earth was round. He was trying to discover land and trade routes and stuff, right? So you say, okay, then why did they bother telling us that lie to begin with? No one ever asked that question. If we know it's a lie, why do they tell the lie? Well, to reinforce the globe model. It's just conditioning.
So you made a comment earlier that that you think that the powers that be are releasing this information to use it, even though it's true, they're using it against us. I don't. Of course, there's no proof of that. I just can't buy into that. I just think that consciousness is raising. People's vibrations are raising for whatever reason, whether the vibration of the Earth is raising, and people are becoming aware. And I've even taken it a step further that perhaps there's a divine intervention here, that God is putting this key to freedom from the box that we live in, saying, hey, instead of focusing on all the little tiny things, which are all big in our lives, check this out and take a view from above. That this could be the one thing that saves human consciousness.
Well, I'm not going to disagree with that because what Flat Earth does, it does bring you closer to God. It really does. Because if you're on this marble just floating through space and you're unimportant and you evolved from a primordial soup, as one of the commenters put it, I think, then you're nothing and you have no accountability to anything. So sin is okay, and a sinful lifestyle is okay because there's no accountability. But when you realize Flat Earth is the truth, you realize there is a creator and there is a purpose, and we are accountable for our actions.
I agreed. I just think that this is the key. This is, when I first discovered it, I'm like, all right, what does it really matter besides it's pretty interesting and they're lying to us? But it ties into every single truth I've been researching. It ties in. We are in a prison planet because we believe it's a ball. The truth of what the Earth isn't, we'll start with it that way, is the key to our freedom.
We have just it took them thousands of years to get humanity to just forget who they really are. I mean, if you believe in a biblical, a literal interpretation, there were people that knew God. They spoke to God, so they had absolute truths. And throughout thousands of years, we have just completely forgotten about who we really are. We're just completely oblivious now.
Agreed.
Maybe it's the fluoride. Maybe it's what they're doing.
Fluoride.
I made this
Go ahead, John.
Sorry, mate. I made this point to Max Syken on the Max Resistance Roundtable yesterday, American time, earlier today, my time. It is, if they can convince us at a young age to stop trusting our own senses and our own instincts, but instead to trust authority, to trust science and all of this. I was thinking about this today. I was listening back to our episode with Jeranism last week today, and Jeranism was talking about how he refuses to believe that there are people on the other side of the world who are upside down to him. And you think about it, these authorities convince us at a young age that up is down and down is up. They literally do that. They convince us, hey, those people in America, they're upside down to you. So from a tiny little age, you've got little children who can see, and they don't feel like they're spinning. They just feel like that everything's normal and nothing's wrong. We tell them, forget your senses, forget your instincts. Up is down and down is up, and we know that because of science. And if you don't trust us, you're crazy, and this is how it's going to be from now on. So you're taking little children when they're at their most vulnerable and when they most want to trust the adults around them, and you're telling them to stop trusting themselves and to trust authority. Now, if I was a slave master, you know what I would do to my slaves? Exactly that. I'd get the little slaves to stop trusting themselves and to trust everything I say. And that's exactly what I think is going on. StinkyCash, what say you?
Oh, absolutely. They don't want us to trust our own senses. You said it right. Trust authority. Listen to authority. Raise your hand when you have a question. Ask permission to go to the bathroom. Don't question it. They do not encourage. I don't know how it is like in Australia, but they don't encourage asking questions in the learning environments here in America.
Well, I said to you earlier in the show that what I've noticed with our guests over the past 6 weeks is that so many of them say that they had periods at school where things didn't make sense to them. What I've found is that looking back at my so-called education, I remember there were distinct periods where things didn't make sense to me. There was a period where I saw the moon and the sun in the sky at the same time. I asked my teacher to explain how that could be. The explanation, from what I remember, wasn't very convincing. There was a couple other instances that came up in physics and chemistry in high school where I thought, well, that doesn't make sense. But it didn't even occur to me that this could be one lie as part of a bigger lie, because by that age I'd already been convinced that we were on a spinning ball. So anything that didn't make sense to me, that's because I wasn't smart enough to understand it. They're very good at getting us to go along with that. And I think that's why this is the first thing they teach you. Before they teach you mathematics, before they teach you your language, in our case English, they teach you you're on a spinning ball. They have to get us when we're young. And that's why the point I make to people is the easiest way that you can prove that we're not on a spinning ball is get someone to explain how they would convince an older child who hadn't been indoctrinated, like a hypothetical. Suppose I had a child, I raised him on an island, I taught him mathematics, I taught him English, I taught him everything he needed to know, except I never taught him that he was on a spinning ball. Suppose he was 10 or 12 years old and he was inquisitive, and I left him with you for a week and you had to convince him he was on a spinning ball, but he'd never heard this theory. How would you convince him? You see, in our society, by the time they're 12, they've known they're on a spinning ball for 7 years. Most of it, at least 7 years. Half their lives or more, they've known they're on a spinning ball. That's now their worldview. They're indoctrinated. But if you just took the average person who trusted their senses, didn't feel like they were spinning at 1,000 miles an hour, how would you convince them they're on a spinning ball? They would think that you were crazy, because it is crazy, and that's why they have to indoctrinate us from such a young age. Now, Matrix, you've been quiet. Your internet's been no good. Do you have anything to add to this this notion that it is indoctrination from a young age, and that's why we believe this nonsense that up is down?
Yeah, well, what StinkyCash was saying just now, about Israel, his experience in Israel sounds very similar to like cult indoctrination, and being the way they seduce people to become part of the family, techniques including being part of the chosen people. We're really looking at various conspiracies here and how these have all been perpetrated for a long time. A plan in operation to control people's minds, and what better way to do that to deceive them about where they are, piece by piece over time, like from Copernicus, to Newton, to Darwin, and to the Jesuit priest who came up with the Big Bang, and so on. So the discussion about who is behind it and who is responsible, like whether it's Zionists and Jesuits, it's a really important part of the conversation. And I'm wondering, in Jeff's time in Israel, did he, obviously Judaism is a big part of Israeli culture, and also Christian sort of culture, and the Jewish Torah, and which includes Genesis, this whole creation account. I wonder if he heard anything about that in his time in Israel, and what kind of conversations that he heard there.
Well, we didn't come across any Muslims or any Christians while I was in Israel. They don't like to talk about Jesus, okay? And that's the funny thing about these Christian Zionists who support Israel and love the Jews so much. Like, they don't realize what the Jews actually believe. They don't believe in the Torah anymore. That's not their holiest book. If you ask any Jew in Israel what the holiest book in Judaism is, they're going to say it's the Talmud. Now, the Talmud is the oral traditions of the Jewish religion passed down from the Pharisees that Jesus used to speak out against, and all these satanic rabbis that they eventually wrote down in books, right? And these books were recorded 700 years after Jesus. And this is their holiest book. It's the word of man, okay? And the Bible specifically says, don't heed to Jewish fables and the commandments of men, okay? That's the only place in the entire King James Bible where they use the word Jewish. It's in Titus 1. They say, don't heed to Jewish fables and the commandments of men. And that's what the Talmud says. And now when you do some research on the Talmud, there's some pretty grotesque stuff in it. And what they say about Jesus, no Christian should tolerate that. So I don't see how you could say, you're brothers with somebody, or that you even pray to the same God as somebody who rejects Christ the way they do. And the rest of their laws in the Talmud are absolutely gross. I have a video that just has a few of them. You can check that out on my channel.
Yeah, I've seen that video. It's a really interesting one. I mean, the things they say in there about being able to have sex with children underage and so on. I mean, there's a lot of controversy about Eric Dubay and how he put out a video. I think it was Adolf Hitler and the Jew World Order. But now, when I watched that video, I watched a couple of hours of it so far. But I was seeing rabbis, sucking the blood off circumcised babies' penises and various other things in that video, So there seems to be this overarching sort of conspiracy, satanic. There's definitely a big part of the deception going on here. False belief system, false prophets, and what have you.
Well, I don't know about Hitler. I don't know if I agree with Eric Dubay 100%, because it sure seems like the Holocaust didn't happen the way they said. So I'm not so sure if Hitler is this hero that Eric Dubay might claim he is. I have to do more research, to be honest with you. But I mean, when you look at the world today, it is pretty apparent that the Jews, they're running Hollywood, they're running the news media, they're running the music industry, and they own all the corporations that are pushing sin. And the flat Earth and the globe lie is part of it, because when they remove the divinity from you, they make your God money, right? Everything revolves around money nowadays. And if people realized, hey, money is not important because I'm important, because I live on Earth, which is the center of creation, and that there's a God, then maybe they'll stop going to work every day and doing slave labor, and they'll start serving God instead of serving money. So it's this globe lie that keeps everything glued together for them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the one thing I didn't like about Matt from the NASA channel's video and accusations against Eric Dubay and saying you can't talk about the Jewish thing aspect of the bigger conspiracy. For me, he's trying to shut down conversation regarding truth. I mean, the whole bigger conspiracy, where it came from, is a really important part of the discussion to me. And discussing what happened in World War II, and Jewish belief systems, and Catholic belief systems, Christian belief systems, atheist belief systems, all part of the discussion.
Yeah.
John, you coming back?
Yeah, sorry guys, I was just trying to dig up a quote from Martin Luther on the topic of the Jews. We will move on to No Plans because I know that many of the 80 live listeners that we've got right now want to hear your thoughts, Stinky Cash. But just quickly, can I get your opinion on this? Some people are trying to say that because Eric Dubé, who's seen as one of the leaders of this, what I call the neo-flat earth movement, because he's now bringing up the Jewish question, the Holocaust, these kinds of issues, that he's somehow poisoning the well and discrediting the flat earth movement. Of course, Dubé says in reply, well, hold on, there's more there's more people who believe that Hitler wasn't what we're told that he is. There's more people who disbelieve the Holocaust fables than there are flat earthers. If anything, he's making them look bad, not flat earth. Did your opinion of Eric Dubé go up or down, or was it unchanged when he released that 4-hour documentary?
I had a lot of respect for him before. I still have a lot of respect for him. I don't think he was poisoning the well like Matt Boylan said. I think Matt Boylan was completely out of line. I actually made a video showing how the only person calling Eric Dubé a Nazi or a fascist or a Jew hater or an anti-Semite was Matt Boylan himself. I don't think people were ever going to associate flat earth with being, Nazis. I think it was just absolutely ridiculous. And it's funny because the one way I'm able to tell a shill or controlled opposition from a genuine person is that one of the reasons I used to do was, do they support Israel? Do they talk about Israel? That was one of the biggest things. And then it turns out the second biggest thing is, do they use the globe in their logo? Do they push the globe lie? So those are the two biggest things for me. Are do you support Zionism, and do you push the globe?
Yeah, understandable. Well, let me read a quote to the listeners. And I know that for many listeners, they're tuning in because they're interested in baller skepticism and flat earth theory, and some of this might be new to them. But if you're truly interested in the truth, and that's how you came to be listening to a baller skeptic show, then you ought to hear this as well. Martin Luther, who obviously is the person after whom Lutheranism is named, he said this in a book entitled The Jews and Their Lies, quote, "Sixth, I advise that usury be prohibited to them, and that all cash and treasure of silver and gold be taken from them and put aside for safekeeping. The reason for such a measure is that, as said above, they have no other means of earning a livelihood than usury, and by it they have stolen and robbed from us all they possess. Such money should now be used in no other way than the following. Whenever a Jew is sincerely converted, he should be handed 100, 200, or 300 florins, as personal circumstances may suggest. With this, he could set himself up in some occupation for the support of his poor wife and children, and the maintenance of the old or feeble. For such evil gains are cursed if they are not put to use with God's blessing in a good and worthy cause." And quote, now I strongly recommend listeners go and do their own research on everything that I say. The reason I bring this up is because for my entire adult life, the Federal Reserve, which you mentioned earlier, Stinky Cash, was created in 1913. For my entire adult life, the chairman of the Federal Reserve has been Jewish. Currently Janet Yellen, prior to that, Ben Bernanke, prior to that, Alan Greenspan, since I think 1987 was when he got in, so the year of my birth. I might be off, it might have been 1986, but for the whole time it's been Jews who've been in charge of the Federal Reserve. Then you look into the media, and like you said, they've got huge and disproportionate control. Now, some people will say, well, does that mean that all Jews are bad? And of course they're responsible. The smart answer to that is, of course not. Most of us know good Jews. We know they're not in any way involved in this. But there's no doubt that Jewish people are overrepresented in all of this, and to not even acknowledge it is to not acknowledge the truth. And I think Eric Dubé, in putting out that documentary, all he was doing was saying, here's some things that many people don't know about the Jewish question, about Zionism, about Israel. And now that you know them, you do with this information what you will. And I don't hold that against him, because I got into all of this because I was searching for the truth, and they didn't tell me about any of this at school. And I believe that usury is slavery. The debt-based money system is at the heart of so many of the evils in the world today. And if only we knew that there was a time in the past, according to history, where people weren't allowed to lend to each other at interest and then essentially enslave one another, that it wasn't seen as acceptable. And yet today, someone goes to buy a house, they have to borrow money. We live in a messed up system, and people should be talking about it. They should know about it. They should be doing their own research. But enough from me now, Stinky Cash. A lot of the listeners, we've got 80 people listening live. They want your views on what happened on 9/11. We're coming towards the end of the show, but in a few minutes, can you give listeners an idea of what you think happened and when you came to believe what you currently believe?
Sure, yeah. I was 12 years old when 9/11 happened in 2001. I was in second period 7th grade history class. You know, everybody remembers where they were, except for the Bushes. They don't remember where they were. But I believe the same lies that most of America believe. You know, I grew up in New Jersey. You know, I could see the Twin Towers from the beach here where I live. You know, they're so close, and I believed all the same lies. And then the thing is, they control the opposition so well. So the first couple, 9/11 conspiracy movies that came out, none of them preached no planes. So the one thing they all have in common is that planes hit the towers. And if you hear Bush's speech, you know, right after, you know, his 9/11 speech, he says the victims were on, the first thing he says is that victims were on airplanes. He says that before he says in buildings, because they wanted to reinforce this idea that it was jetliners that hit the World Trade Center. But after I woke up and I started doing, you know, research, which obviously led to 9/11, I came across this great documentary called September Clues 9/11, and they used the best evidence that there is, which was the news media. And it's so apparent, it's so obvious that the Zionist-owned news were all in on the hoax. Okay, CNN, Fox, ABC, all these news outlets were complicit in this. And it is obvious that the planes that hit the towers were CGI. They were either covering up a missile or nothing happened and it was just explosives went off. But the one conclusion I came to after doing this research was that no planes hit those towers. And it's obvious that no plane hit the Pentagon. So, you know, it would make a lot more sense that no planes were used at all.
So you've seen the documentary September Clues. You're convinced that there were no planes on 9/11. Obviously, there are many people out there who put themselves forward as leaders of the truth movement or as truth tellers or what have you, but they don't address no planes. In my opinion, that's because they are gatekeepers, whether they know it or
Absolutely.
not. Is this your impression as well, StinkyCash?
Yes. I've come to realize that the people that don't want to talk no planes, the first thing they'll say is no planes. It's crazy, or you know they'll label you the same way you know a sheep would, and it's all to serve an agenda because they don't want you looking at that angle, because that's the truth. The truth is easy. The truth, it shouldn't be hard to come to the truth. And if someone tries to make the truth seem really complicated, then it's probably not the truth.
Well, it doesn't make sense that they would kill 3,000 people in a false flag operation, because the average person has, 10, 20, 30 people, close family and friends, who wouldn't just sit idly by and accept it. If you killed 3,000 people, then you've got literally thousands of people, any of whom are liable to act in unpredictable ways. Why would you take that risk if you can just fake the whole thing through the media? And we know that they can fake these kinds of things through the media because the vast majority of people don't question the media. They trust the news as their friend. I'll throw to you there, Matrix. You've been pretty quiet. When did you first come across the notion of no planes?
Yeah, well, I think, that's been maybe a couple of years ago now. I mean, it took me a while whilst I was, researching 9/11. You go through the different phases. You watch Loose Change and so on, and then you discover Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth, and which I believe is a limited hangout. And then, further research, look into other things like directed energy weapons and other theories, ideas, and then you come across the no planes thing, which is one of the last things to crop up on your YouTube search at the time. And over that period of time, no planes has taken, has become more of a popular belief, and it's impossible for aluminium planes to penetrate reinforced steel and concrete mega structures that weigh over 500,000 tons. And then you apply something like Newton's third law of opposing forces, equal and opposite reactions and so on. So, there's just no way, from the footage that we've seen, can that plane penetrate a building in the way that it did in the video that they've shown us. It went for that building like butter. And even, and some of the shots appears to have come out the other side. And for me, there were no planes anywhere on 9/11. No planes hit the towers. No planes crashed into the Pentagon or crashed into the field in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. So it's for me, this whole no planes thing really disproves the whole official story. It's science. It's basic science. There was no debris at the Pentagon, no debris in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, barely any debris at the World Trade Centers. And, this proves the whole 19 hijackers story.
Oh,
so
yeah.
it's a really important part of it all.
Well, the 19 hijackers lie is like the first, and they tell you that they were Saudis. So that's the first layer of disinformation in the conspiracy world, where if they tell you that the 19 hijackers were Saudi, well, you're accepting the fact that there were 19 hijackers on airplanes, right? So that's the first level of disinformation, because they always control the opposition. But I'm actually led to believe, after doing as much research as I have, that those two buildings were built with the sole purpose of coming down one day. It was a ritual. The two pillars that we always see in all the Freemason symbolism. And I think they broke ground on the World Trade Center in 1968, which was 33 years before 2001. They even changed the emergency call number to 911 in the year 1968.
Didn't they set the cornerstone on 9/11 when they broke ground on the date of 9/11?
That I'm not sure, but that's amazing.
I know that. I think it was there and the Pentagon, or the Pentagon, or I forget if it's both, but I'm pretty sure it was the towers broke ground on 9/11.
And it's no doubt that this was planned years in advance, just by looking at all the predictive programming and symbolism in movies, specifically the Back to the Future movies. Right now on YouTube, there are great videos showing how Back to the Future 1 and 2, show the JFK assassination and the predict 9/11, like, hands down.
Amazing, 100 times over.
Yes.
You watch the breakdown of that. It's amazing. Just search 9/11 Back to the Future, and there's an hour documentary. There's a couple shorter ones. Amazing. I just want to address did planes take off? Were they filled with people? Did they land somewhere? Those are all questions that can be argued all day. But what can't be argued, if you look at this picture I have up, a Boeing 767. Next time you go to the airport, find a Boeing 767 and see how tiny you are next to it. And we're told to believe that the entire plane, without a single piece falling off, went through this. If you can believe that it went through the steel and the aluminum on the outside, which is ridiculous in itself, you have to believe that it went through 8 floors. These are floor joists, not just joists, cement reinforced concrete with steel reinforced slabs, and it just sliced in there without slowing down and vanished inside the building.
Yeah, and Dave, in the official story, they'll tell you that the wings of the plane sliced through the World Trade Center like butter, but when the same kind of plane hit the Pentagon, the wings bent backwards and went through the tiny hole.
Well, they folded into themselves and went into the fuselage, and then it went in, and the fires were so hot it vaporized. Don't be silly.
Supposedly, yeah. Oh, yeah. So their official stories don't even make sense. It's absolutely ludicrous.
And here's the thing: it's so ridiculous that people will refuse to look at it because they don't want to feel stupid.
No, they don't want to know the truth. It's the same reason why people want to stay plugged into the Matrix. Okay?
Knowing the truth.
Eating juicy steak in a nice restaurant, ignorance is bliss, is a lot better than eating, slime, with holes in your head, floating around, with Morpheus and Trinity. You know what I mean?
Right. I mean, just this is the picture that, when I came on to No Planes, a while ago, but not at the beginning, after I'd gone through many other iterations, whatever the word is, of my theory of what happened. But when I saw this picture, you can look at the videos and say that they're fake and stuff, but there's multiple pictures that show this, and this is the hole that they're showing us. So even if this is a faked image from the media or it's a real image, either way, there was no plane that went into there. And even if the steel was soft and the planes could fly at these ridiculous speeds that they can't fly at, how would it get through the concrete floors? How would it just slice in and those floors disappear? None of it makes any sense.
No, they took down the 2 pillars, and when you look at the new building, it's like it's 2 square buildings spiraled into one. So that's what it was, the 2 pillars merging into one, and they named it One World Trade Center. Okay, just to drive that home point, the One World.
I believe that completely. If you look at it, it all lines up with the arch at Washington Square Park. It's incredible. There's a lot of videos out there on it.
Yeah, it was definitely a ritualistic event that was planned for a long time. I mean, you've got the Twin Towers, Yakin and Boaz from Freemasonry. You've got the Pentagon, which is a pentagram.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, Pennsylvania, the history of Pennsylvania, and what is it, the forest god is related to that as well. And also the numerology used. You know, it's very much tied into Aleister Crowley numerology.
Do you guys know what the official story is on Pennsylvania? My understanding, the official story is that the plane hit at such a steep angle and was going so fast that it went so deep into the ground, and the ground just swallowed it, that they couldn't recover any of it, and they're not even going to try. Meanwhile, a Chilean, coal miners 2 miles under the earth, they'll dig for a month to get them out.
And the official... Sorry about that. Yeah, the official story is so ludicrous that they had to use their Hollywood propaganda to tell the official story. That's why they come out with movies like in the same year, I think it was 2006, they came out with Flight 93 and United 93. 2 different movies telling the same story about the same flight, because they have to make these based on true story movies to drive home these official stories. It's just propaganda.
The video that John just had up on the screen, if you watch it carefully, the wing goes through the building before the hole appears. You watch the right wing, it goes into the building and there's no hole.
Here, go back even further. I'll point you out another flaw. Just pause it. Right. The wing disappears behind this little building. Yeah. So right here, right there. The wing goes behind that building, but I think it should be in front. But I could be wrong.
Well, I've seen people try and explain this by saying that building is actually in front of where the plane should be. So for me, I get what you're saying there, StinkyCash. That could be a problem. But for me, the bigger problem is, look at the way that this plane supposedly goes straight into the building without any apparent resistance.
Oh, yeah.
Look, I was 14 years old when this happened, so I'm going to give myself a pass about this. But how could any sensible person believe this nonsense? What I find amazing with some of these nonsense stories they give us, whether it's a theory of gravity or the Boston bombings, or in this case, an aluminium plane cutting through steel, is once you realize what you're looking at, it's not just silly, it is utterly absurd. Look at this. It doesn't even slow down. Are you kidding me? Now, once you've become aware of this, this is the biggest aspect of 9/11 that people should be talking about, at least in terms of how the thing went down. Obviously, who's behind it is important as well. But what gets me is how many supposed leaders of the truth movement, they'll talk about 9/11 being such an important psyop, but they'll still carry on as though it was a false flag where 3,000 people died. And hey, who knows how many people died? But this is not a real plane. And if you watch September Clues, like you said, StinkyCash, we know this isn't a real plane. So this isn't merely a false flag. This is a hoax. This is media fakery, which is far more significant, because if you buy into the official conspiracy theory, which was that it was an inside job by the government or whatever, then you still believe that something happened and the media reported on it. Whereas when you understand that this is all fake, the media was 100% complicit in it. And then you're talking about a whole other kettle of fish. Now you're talking about George Orwell, 1984, Ministry of Truth. You cannot trust the mainstream media about anything. This is far more important than a false flag. This is a hoax. So the question becomes, StinkyCash, and we'll go around the round table about this one, why aren't some of the leading so-called hoax busters talking about the fact that plans on 9/11 is a hoax? StinkyCash, what say you?
Simply because it's controlled opposition. I mean, it says it right in the Jewish Talmud. The best way to control your opposition is to lead them, is to become them. That's what's happened to organized religion. That's what happens in politics. It happens everywhere. That's how they operate. So the first layer of conspiracy theorists, they're going to tell you that 19 Saudi hijackers were on airplanes and that it was an inside job. They're not going to tell you that it was an Israeli job. They're not going to tell you about the dancing Israelis who were sent from Israel to film the event, that they had foreknowledge of the event. They'll never lead you down that path because that's their job. It's to get you trapped at a certain level of awakening and not getting past it.
Yeah, well said. Well, I think that Dearth wants to share another video. We're going to go to 2.5 hours if that's cool with you guys. So we've got about 15 minutes left. We'll have one more topic after this one. If you guys are happy to stick around, Dearth, explain this one to us. Sorry about the dead air there, folks.
No problem. I'm there. This is just a video where a guy shows in 5 minutes time using Google plugins how to create an aircraft and make it look like it crashes into a building. So there's the picture that we were shown. He takes it, he stabilizes the motion, and then he takes a Google stock image of a Boeing 767, angles it, he turns it red so you can see which one's which, because when he's done, you can't tell the difference. So he creates it, he moves it over, he adds puffs of smoke, and literally in 5 minutes while making this video, he created the same image. He draw a little mask on how to make it disappear into the building. He adds the puffs of smoke, and it's simple media fakery.
Yeah, straight up and down media fakery. And anyone who watches September Clues will understand that the planes were fake. All the different camera angles we were given don't match with one another. Then you dig deep enough, you understand that a lot of these so-called amateur photographers have direct ties to the mainstream media. Then you look into the 3,000 people who supposedly died. You find out that in many, if not most, if not all cases, not only are we being given sims, fake victims, but they're laughably fake. The photos, sometimes they reuse the same photo from one victim to another. Most of the photos are just woeful. The online memorials, the tributes that are left are generic spam bot tributes. If these were real people, where are the real victims, families and friends coming out and giving tributes to them? The whole thing's a lot of nonsense. And then you look into the death registry from the state of New York at the time. Maybe, Dirk, you can explain more about this being more close to the event. You find out that there isn't even 3,000 people who supposedly died, and the whole story is just complete and utter nonsense. Now, some people might wonder, well, why are you focusing on this today, especially on a baller Skeptic show? Well, firstly, because people like StinkyCash and myself, we didn't start off as flat. I mean, I'm not an official flat earther right now, but I'll say right now I've got less problems with the flat earth model than I do with the ball model. We didn't get into questioning the ball, from a young age. This has come to us from doing other research, and one of the things that I had to learn, I can't speak for StinkyCash, is you have to learn just how easy it is for the media and for schools to lie to us and to get away with it before you can get your head around a bigger lie such as the ball earth dearth. Would you agree that for a lot of people, it's very hard to accept that they've been lied to about the ball, but once they realize they've been lied to about planes on 9/11, it can become an easier process?
That was my thing. That's why I started the Facebook page exposing the big three, which is Sandy Hook, 9/11, and Boston, because once you wake up to any one of those, and they all have different stories and they're all put together in different ways, once you wake up to one of them, the other ones, you can all of a sudden see you're now awake, and you wake up to everything else much quicker. If I hadn't been awake at all to anything and I came across the flat earth, I don't know if I would have dug in. But because of my experience that, the truth is far stranger than fiction, I dug into the ball earth the flat earth looking to disprove it or laugh at it, and I never came out.
Yeah, the flat earth is definitely not the first, the first file you should crack open in your path to truth. It was probably the last thing I came across.
Yeah, I used to believe for 9/11 that architects and engineers, controlled demolition was the best place to start, even though I don't believe it. Now I just jump into the no planes. I start with no planes.
Well, it goes to the heart of everything because, again, once you understand that the media isn't separate from the controlling structures, that they're all part of the same thing. In fact, they need the mainstream media to propagate us, to get us to believe the nonsense that we do. Once you understand that, then other things can start making sense. But so long as you believe that the media was just reporting on what happened on 9/11, then you don't understand the depths to which the control grid operates. The control grid runs very deep, it's very stringent, many people are involved. How many people are involved? I don't pretend to know, but enough of them are involved to convince the rest of us to believe complete and utter nonsense. Again, I've made this point a few times today, I'll make it again. The people who put themselves forward as truth tellers, as the leaders of the truth movement, if they're not addressing no planes on 9/11, then you, if you're smart, will question why that is. Is it because they don't know, in which case they're poor researchers, they're not the leaders of anything, or do they know but it's their job not to talk about it? Then you're dealing with intentional gatekeepers. Matrix, I'll throw to you.
Yeah, I mean, I think it takes a while for people to come to learn of this, but I mean, most if you're truth seekers should be aware of the no planes issue right now, and or for a while now, and should have been talking about it. It is a big question mark for me. You know, this, you want to bring down the system and expose media fakery and media lies. You know, what better evidence do you have than 9/11 and no planes? I mean, it is the key to showing how we've been deceived about everything. I mean, the BBC also reported the collapse of Building 7 20 minutes before it came down. So this is a big worldwide media collaboration in perpetrating this deception, and it really ties into like Hollywood production and movies like Flight 93, 1993, Zero Dark 30, the film, the Oscar-winning film about Osama bin Laden and his assassination. And that ties back into films like Gravity and Interstellar.
Yeah, well, the thing with Building 7, you said they reported on it early, is Building 7 was part of the ritual. The third pillar is part of the ritual. That building had to come down. And I believe that it didn't come down when it was supposed to. But it was part of the ritual, so they had no choice. So they had in a very sketchy manner, bring the building down at like 5 o'clock in the afternoon. But it was supposed to be brought down a lot earlier. I think something went wrong, and that's why it was reported on early.
I think that Flight 93 was supposed to appear to have hit Building 7, but something went wrong. Yeah, something went wrong with their plan, and they had to come up with a backup plan, and that's why Shanksville had such a ridiculous story, and it's still sealed off to this day. Nobody can go there.
Yeah, because, cell phones work from airplanes in 2001.
But they don't work today.
Yeah, totally.
Well, I tell you what, guys, I'm glad that we covered the no planes thing. Like I said, people can go and check out your videos on no planes on your channel, StinkyCash. If you're just joining us late, this is, of course, the Baller Skeptic Roundtable, episode 7. We've got 80 people watching live. We're going to have one more topic before we wrap up the show. And in your video, let's see, is the Earth flat? Sorry, StinkyCash. In your video, Disappearing Flights over South Atlantic Confirmed, you talk about how you believe that Vladimir Putin is part of the New World Order and how Russia and America were never enemies. I want to spend the last 10 minutes of this episode getting your views and the rest of the panel's views on what the New World Order is, who's really in on it on each other's side. There are people out there who still believe that Putin is a genuine threat to the New World Order, or that Bashar al-Assad is a genuine threat to the New World Order, or that Iran is a genuine threat to the New World Order. They still believe that the New World Order hasn't controlled every major country on the planet. You seem to believe that they're all in on it already together. StinkyCash, you want to give us your basic views on who you think is in on it at the top levels?
Well, I think we can all agree that the moon landings were a hoax. And I think we can all agree that in 1969, the Soviet Union would have spotted all the flaws in the video footage that we do today. So, Russian intelligence would have been picking apart those moon landing videos, inch by inch. So the fact that they didn't come out saying that America's full of shit just kind of proves to me that this whole space race and Cold War and, it was all an act. Russia and America were brothers. And the Cold War, it wasn't a war against, capitalism versus communism, USA versus Russia. it was a psychological war against the citizens of the world. You know, the fact that I tend to believe now that nuclear weapons don't even exist. But if they tell you they exist, then they can control you by saying that, you know, they could just end everything with one little click of the mouse. So I tend to believe Russia is in on it, and that we were never at war, and that we were never really enemies at the tippy top. Like, how can we be at war in Ukraine, but buddy in Antarctica? That doesn't really make a lot of sense. Or we're buddy on the international fake station. So that it doesn't really add up. However, it does kind of seem like Putin is going rogue. It seems like he doesn't want to surrender Russian sovereignty. So that could be the case, but I really don't know what to make of it. It's one of the biggest question marks I have.
I agree with your take on it. If Russia and America were genuinely enemies, why didn't one blow the lid on the other one? And for me, George Orwell, Eric Blair, call him what you like, he wrote about this, say, in Animal Farm, the fact that the people who run the farms, the farmers, the people who run the governments, not the politicians, but the people who are really in charge, they're all friends, they're all chums, they hang out, they have dinner together, they talk about how they can both make their farms more efficient, and they use each other as fake threats so that their farm animals think that they need the farmers. And when you talk about the Cold War and nukes being fake, there are a lot of so-called truthers out there who refuse to countenance the possibility that nukes are fake because they're being told, oh, anybody who talks about nukes being fake, they've been sent to discredit the truth movement. Apparently the truth movement, all they can talk about is Boston, Sandy Hook, and 9/11, 3,000 dead. That's what the truth movement is about. Questioning whether nukes are real, that's discrediting the truth movement. What a load of nonsense, Dirth, I'll throw to you.
Well, I do focus on those things a lot, and for the purpose of waking people up, but I don't censor the topics. As you can see, you know, I'll talk about the hollow hoax, I'll talk about flat Earth, you know, whatever it takes to wake you up from the fake reality that we're living in is what I'll focus on. So, you know.
Oh, I didn't mean that the wrong way, Dirth. You're different. So I'm very sorry. That probably came across the wrong way. There's every reason to focus on those three events and others. It's the people who say that's all you're allowed to focus on. I would put to you that is classic gatekeeping. I've never heard you suggest that people should only focus on those. You use those as an avenue to get people to focus on the bigger hoaxes. I would suggest that makes sense. That's logical. It's the ones who say, no, these are all you can focus on. Anyone else who says anything differently, they're here to discredit the truth movement. What utter nonsense. Think about this logically. If you're running America, if you're running the Soviet Union, you want your people to be scared of an enemy because then they'll rely on you more. Then you can tax them more. You can spend more on your so-called defense industry. It makes sense for them both to agree to lie about nuclear bombs. Go and look at the footage of supposed nuclear bombs. Some of it is utterly laughable and clearly done on like a 1/10 scale model. I mean, yeah. It's almost as funny as the moon landing stuff. And a lot of people refuse to look at it because they're told.
John, I wanted to add something to your point. Now, what would you say about somebody who is only pushing flat Earth, and they're kind of saying flat Earth is the only thing you can look at? Because that seems to be what Matthew Boylan's angle is. He doesn't want to talk about anything else. He wants to keep everyone focused on flat Earth and flat Earth only.
Well, as the host of this show, I feel like I have to be diplomatic, and I can point the dots out to people and hope that they connect the dots. I would simply say to people, go and watch Matt Boylan's, 2.5-hour diatribe against Eric Dubé, and notice the number of times that he says that Dubé is a Jew. In fact, StinkyCash, you're the one who made the video pointing this out.
Yeah, I don't know if you could get the audio of that, but we could watch that. It's kind of hilarious because in his own words, he says that if you want to brainwash somebody, just repeat the same thing over and over again, and eventually they'll buy into it. Well, that's exactly what he did, calling Eric Dubé an anti-Semite, a Jew basher. He actually called him a fascist anarchist. So wrap your head around that.
Yeah, exactly. Well, unfortunately, we don't have time to play that one tonight. But what I'll do is I'll make sure that underneath this video on YouTube, we've got links to all the videos that we've talked about, and I'll make sure at the top of the list, it's only a 2 or 3 minute clip that you put together, StinkyCash. I'm not sure how long it took you to put it together, but it shows the number of times in Boylan's diatribe, the number of times he calls Dubé a Jew basher and an anti-Semite. And when I watched it, it was obvious to me what he was doing, but I think the way that you've edited his video, it makes it so clear to anyone that's exactly the strategy that he was using. And the same strategy has been used against me, and I'm sure some of the people listening right now, if people keep using the same word against you time and time again, if they constantly call you a shill over and over and over again, sure, the smart people will see through it, but they're not trying to appeal to the smart people. They're trying to appeal to the dumb people. If you can plant that seed in someone's mind time and time again, eventually they'll come to believe it. And that's what I believe Boylan was doing with Dubé. But like I say about anything, don't believe me, don't trust anyone on the panel tonight. Go and watch this stuff yourself, come to your own conclusions. Now, there's one more topic I want to talk about tonight before we wrap it up. So just quickly on this topic of... I've completely lost my train of thought here, guys. It's 12:30 at night in the morning. It's 12:30 in the morning here. I apologize. We were talking about. Help me out here, guys.
The NASA photo.
The NASA photo was next on the agenda. Yeah, we're going to wrap up soon. The NASA photo was the next one. StinkyCash, I want to get your opinion on this. NASA have, by amazing coincidence, just released a new photo of the ball. Have you seen it? What are your thoughts?
A new photo of the Earth?
Yeah, just in the last, 24 hours?
No, I don't think I came across that. The last bullshit image I saw was them releasing the image of Pluto that happened to have Disney's Pluto on it. I don't know if you caught that one.
John?
John, can you pull the picture up on the screen?
Yeah, sorry guys, sorry for the dead air there, listeners. I just put myself on mute. I'm going to try and screen share this NASA photo. While I'm doing that, I'll throw to you there, Matrix. You've seen the new photo from NASA, supposedly of the ball. What are your thoughts while I get the screen share ready?
Yeah, well, I made a video recently called NASA Hoax Blue Marble, and I pull apart it's one of the most famous pictures. It's not the 1972 Apollo 17 photo. It's one of the, I think it's from 2003, and on that photo, it's all to do with, they claim that it's ribbons of data from satellite imagery. And, on that image, they copy and pasted clouds over and over again. And so, people were waking up to the whole NASA deception, the lack of photos of Earth from space, the severe lack and of real photos. And now they've brought out this new photo, which, curiously, in the cloud pattern, if you turn it up the other way round, it spells out sex, S-E-X.
I saw that.
It's like they're playing a big joke on us here. It's
that's classic Disney. That's classic Disney.
Yeah, definitely. They're subliminals. I mean, they're putting it in there. Sex sells. I mean, they're selling this image with sex.
And can anybody tell what landmass that is underneath? I mean, they never show land clearly.
They will never.
I guess that's USA, Panama, going down into South America. So that's a funny angle. I don't know. It's just.
And Dave, it says it's seen from a distance of 1 million miles away, and they just happen to get the exact half of the Earth that's lit up by sun.
They always get it perfectly. Pluto has no shadowing. It's a perfect circle, so the sun has to be directly behind it. It's absolutely insane.
And it works. What were you saying? No, you said.
I was going to say it's too hard to do a shadowed ball. I mean, because there's so many things that can go wrong, so they just show the whole thing. They have a little shading on the right side of this one.
Yeah.
But it's ridiculous.
And it's funny because on a solid ball planet, you would see the shading that you're talking about. Yep. But when we look at the moon, which is supposedly the same kind of structure, there is no shadowing around a full moon. It is completely evenly lit for the entire circle, which means two things. Either the moon is not a sphere, or it is a sphere and the light comes from within. But it cannot be a sphere that's reflecting sunlight.
Do you guys remember what Aldrin and Armstrong said at their press conference when they got back from the moon about the stars?
I don't remember. I don't remember if they could see stars or they couldn't see stars. I don't know if they got their story straight.
Yeah, well, for listeners, I'm sure most of our listeners know, but if you don't, go and check it out. The question and this is the press conference that they did when they got back from the moon landing. They had to spend like a week or two in quarantine. Then straight afterwards, they had a press conference. It's actually fascinating video footage to go back and look at. And one of the questions from the press gallery was, do you remember seeing stars? And one of Armstrong or Aldrin responds, I'm not sure. And then the other one says, no, we didn't see any stars. So we're supposed to believe that on their trip from the Earth to the moon and back, what's that, 240,000 some miles either way, that they didn't see any stars. And then you look at this footage and you think, well, if this is what space looks like, maybe they're right. Because look, once again, NASA gives us footage, no stars. You have to be, if you want to believe in this, go for it. But you can't expect to be taken seriously by anybody. This is complete and utter nonsense. And why don't we just spend a couple minutes going through the comment, through the article? This is from Time. I'm not sure who owns Time. Maybe one of you guys.
I know. Time is owned by Henry Luce, who was the founder of Time Life, and he was a Yale Skull and Bonesman.
Oh, there you go. So,
if you want to trace Time all the way back.
Yeah, and that's another thing. If we get you on the show again, StinkyCash, we'll have to talk about your work on Skull and Bones, because you have done videos on it, and Skull and Bones, fascinating stuff. So this is the article from Time. Check out the latest photo of planet Earth. NASA released the first image of Earth from its Deep Space Climate Observatory satellite on Monday. The image shows a sunlit Earth from 1 million miles away. NASA says the photo was snapped with a Earth polychromatic imaging camera, EPIC, a 4-megapixel CCD camera, and a telescope. Soon, EPIC will be taking daily photos of Earth, which will be uploaded to a website 12 to 36 hours later, so people can view them by September. This is the first time researchers will be able to study the daily variations of the globe. Astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson took to his Facebook page at the request of the White House to comment on the new photo. Earth, not mounted on a stand with color-coded state and national boundaries, as schoolroom globes are prone to display. Instead, we see our world as only a cosmic perspective can provide. Blue oceans, dry land, white clouds, polar ice, a sunlit planet teeming with life, framed in darkness. Occasions such as this offer renewed confidence that we may ultimately become responsible shepherds of our own fate and the fate of that fragile home we call Earth, end quote. I mean,
and at the same time, John, the image we're looking at shows a perfect circle, not an oblate spheroid and not a pear shape.
Well, our friends at We Spew the Lies explained why that is. That's because it's only slightly oblately spheroid. And
no.
Check out John, stop sharing for a second. This is a picture. If you look at this picture, it shows some balls, spheres. Which one of these looks three-dimensional to you? And of course, the blue one, the white one, they look. The other one on the left is a little, what a sphere might look like. The top one is actually a picture that John LeBon took of the moon. I took this from one of your videos. There's no shading. It's perfectly lit. This was a full moon, but you would see shading like you do on this blue ball here. It's insane. I'm not sure what the moon is, but it's not a ball. It's not a ball illuminated by the sun. You would see a hot spot. There's no hot spot. All of these have the spot that they're lit by. Matrix?
Yeah, it's an aspect of light diffusion. You should be seeing a hot spot, and and shadows around the side of the sphere. A gradient, let's say.
Right. There's nothing, and then check. This is the picture that Jeff was talking about. This is Pluto. Somebody inserted some eyes and a nose. What does that look like? Pluto, the Disney character that was created the same year Pluto was discovered.
And Pluto is Greek. It's Roman for Hades. That's what the underworld, the cold place, the cold, dark place. Does this planet look cold and dark and icy to you?
And how did it get so well lit? And look, it does have a bright spot on it because it's so close to the sun. It's
when we were kids, they said this was a ball covered in ice.
Well, now we know better. It's a Disney cartoon character.
It's just ridiculous.
It looks like a dirty bowling ball. I don't even know what it is.
Yeah.
But
how did they got the one side that's completely lit.
Right, and it's so far away and so dim how come we don't see any stars? They must have done a timed exposure. There would be something in the background, but we have a perfect black outline. And I think Crow777 did an analysis of this in Photoshop and cranked up the levels, and you could see what happens. It's all it's complete fake image versus an image that he took of the moon or another planet, and it comes out differently. So check out his work. It's pretty interesting.
And then the other issue that you've got is that if this supposed space probe is traveling at 1,000 miles an hour, whatever nonsense speed they give us, how can you capture a photo at that kind of speed?
I think it was 32,000.
32,000 miles an hour. Whatever nonsense figure they make up, how on earth could you capture a photo at that speed?
Well, it's got a high 1 megapixel camera on it, high resolution 1 megapixel camera. You
would have to be flying directly towards Pluto and keep it in frame perfectly for that to even be possible.
Right. And what about pictures of it as it passed Pluto so we could see the crescent Pluto?
And let's not forget that all these balls are supposedly moving thousands of miles an hour.
And spinning.
Like, how would you even hit a moving target? It's like trying to hit a bullet with another bullet.
It's been done.
It's been done, not by me.
John?
The other thing about Pluto is that it was, discovered as a planet, which has now been demoted to a dwarf planet in the last few years. It was discovered in 1930, and Pluto is only a few thousand miles wide, yet it's 4.5 billion miles away. So I'm wondering how they discovered it back then. With it being so small and so far away. And coincidentally, I think Disney, the character of Pluto, was also named in that year.
Yeah.
No coincidences.
Well, I tell you what, guys, you know that I love my round numbers. We're already up to 2.5 hours, so I'll leave it up to you guys. We can wrap it up here, or if you want, we can extend it a few minutes and take a look at the latest Stephen Hawking nonsense. You're the guest, StinkyCash, so do you have a few more minutes, or should we wrap it up now?
No, I'm free.
Dearth and Matrix, any objections, or will we make this our first 3-hour extravaganza?
Cool. I was wondering sorry, Dave, I wonder if you could put out, point out to people where on that new NASA Earth photo where it says sex in the clouds, so they can go check it out.
All right, well, I'll get that one up now for a screen share. While I'm doing that, Matrix, do you want to explain what's going on? I'll get the screen share going now.
What's going on with with NASA and these photographs?
No, the sex photograph thing. Do you want to explain it? And I'll get the screen share ready.
Yeah, well, I mean, I went over this photo looking for copy and pasted clouds, but when it first came out, I think it was yesterday, and I didn't see any like I'd seen on the others, and it was today that I came across this video, and someone's pointing it out how sex is written in the clouds. I mean, it's not any other word. It's clearly there, and they're showing it upside down in the on the NASA site and so on. But when you turn the photo upside down, you can see it clearly says sex written in the clouds. I mean, there's no other words on that photo, as far as I'm aware. But what are the chances of that happening? I mean, I think they're really taking the piss.
I do apologise to the listeners for all of the dead air tonight. Last week we were all talking over one another. This week we don't seem to have enough to say. Just give me another few seconds while I get this photo ready, Matrix. I'll see if I can find the photos that you're talking about. Just bear with me.
Yeah, the other thing about it is the timing of the release of this photo. No, it's 1972 till now, was 43 years or something. Right now they bring it out right now with all this debate that's going on about the shape of the Earth and the flat Earth and so on, and they bring it out right now, and they put it out with sex written on it. So
they are definitely reacting to what is going on online with this flat Earth movement. I mean, there's no doubt about it. You see the news all the time. Like right after Jeranism did his laser test, there was articles in the news about green laser pointers being shot at airplanes. which is just a way for them to ban green lasers in the future to prevent other people from doing these flat Earth tests.
All right, so what I've managed to do here is I've just downloaded the photo from that Time article. So this is the photo with the orientation that they gave us. Now we just flip it and flip it again. So now we're at 180 degrees, and some people, Matrix, are suggesting that in the clouds you can see SEX. Now, for me,
that's
I mean,
not doctored. That's the real image.
This is the photo that we just saw on the Time magazine article.
Because I see sex perfectly clear there. It's pretty blatant.
It's Disney style all the way. That's
Disney
no
style.
accident.
That's for anyone listening who doesn't know. You could Google or YouTube this. Just subliminal sexual messages in Disney movies like Little Mermaid, Lion King, they're Aladdin. They're everywhere. There is a penis on the cover of the Little Mermaid box.
Yeah, there's stuff that's so ridiculous, it's unbelievable.
See, now for me, I'll be perfectly honest. For me, when we look at the Pluto photo, completely ridiculous. The Mars rover, completely ridiculous. All of these photos are CGI and nonsense. This apparent sex there, yeah, I would believe they would do that. I mean, that they treat us like morons because we act like morons. We don't question them. We don't call them out. To me, this could potentially be a coincidence. For me, this isn't proof positive, but I don't blame anyone for looking at this and saying, no, this is intentional, because we know that they do this kind of thing. They really do believe that we're morons, and I think for a lot of people, that's the hardest element of the deprogramming, is realizing that nobody wants to believe that there are other people out there who know more than them who are making fun of them. But the reality is that people who run NASA and all of these other agencies, they do know more than us, and they do make fun of us because we're so stupid we never question them. That's just a sad reality. Matrix, what say you?
Yeah, well, for me, it definitely is. It's clear as day that that's what they're doing in that photo. I mean, there's no other words there. You can't pick out any other words in the cloud formation. The E in there, in between the S and the X, it's just a very linear clouds. There's they don't have chemtrails on the picture. None of the photos from space have chemtrails going on from the ISS space station and so on. It's all just blatant CGI to me. I mean, it doesn't look like a sphere, like we were talking about the diffusion of light around the sphere and so on. It's just another blatant piece of propaganda put out there by NASA and the media to reinforce their globe narrative.
Yeah, I agree. Well, what we're going to do is we'll have one final topic and then we'll wrap it up. I want to thank all the listeners. We've got more than 80 people watching live, and we try to keep these shows at 2 hours, but I've had a lot of fun with you on the panel here, Jeff, StinkyCash. It's been so much fun. We'll go to the full 3 hours. I want to share with you guys this one. I read this one just yesterday. Stephen Hawking launches biggest ever search for alien life, updated Tuesday, so yesterday Australian time. This is from our ABC, the Australian Broadcasting Corporation. British cosmologist Stephen Hawking has launched the biggest ever search for intelligent extraterrestrial life in a 10-year, $135 million project to scan the heavens. Russian Silicon Valley entrepreneur Yuri Milner, who is funding the Breakthrough Listen initiative, said it would be the most intensive scientific search ever undertaken for signs of extraterrestrial intelligent life. An infinite universe, there must be other occurrences of life, Mr. Hawking said at the launch event at the Royal Society Science Academy in London. Somewhere in the cosmos, perhaps, intelligent life may be watching. Either way, there is no bigger question. It is time to commit to finding the answer, to search for life beyond Earth. We must know. The project will use some of the biggest telescopes on Earth, searching far deeper into the universe than before for radio spectrum and laser signals. We are launching the most comprehensive search program ever. Blah, blah, blah. It just goes on like this. But here's the fun part, guys. Check this out.
It's time to commit to finding the answer to search for life beyond Earth. The breakthrough initiatives are making that commitment. We are alive, we are intelligent, we must know. Mankind has a deep need to explore, to learn, to know. We also happen to be sociable creatures. It is important to us to know if we are alone in the dark.
Breakthrough Listen takes the search for intelligent life in the universe to a completely new imperative for the
First one.
Sorry, guys, I'm just skimming through all of this nonsense. I want to see if there's anything more from Stephen Hawking. That might be it.
What's amazing with Stephen Hawking's is they have like 5 camera shoots where they're showing it from all different angles, but they never show the angle where you can see his computer screen.
And what's also interesting is the man has had ALS for 50 years. Okay, the disease is called Lou Gehrig's disease, named because Lou Gehrig had the ALS, and by the time he was diagnosed, at the time of his death, I think was about like 3 or 4 years. Okay, nobody lives with ALS for 50 years. This man is literally a human puppet we're all being manipulated. He's not even the one talking. It's like, how dumb are we?
You know,
How dare you insult this poor man? How dare you?
The smartest man in the world. The smartest man in the world, and he talks like that. And I think it was Matt Boylan who made this great point. They have technology where they could have gave him a much more updated voice box that would have sounded more humanistic, but that would have thrown the sheeple off. So they just kept it with that robot voice because that's his voice.
Yeah, and supposedly this guy has lived 30 years longer with this disease than the next longest living sufferer, from what I last read. And he talks by using one muscle in his cheek, and that's enough for him to communicate enough to write a book every other year. And people believe this stuff. And again, I think for a lot of people, this is the hardest aspect to realize. They're making fun of you. They're teasing you. They think it's very funny that you would believe any of this nonsense. I'm not ashamed to admit that I used to believe in Stephen Hawking, but I never looked into the story. The moment I looked into the story, I said, hold on, this guy's writing a book every other year by using one muscle in his cheek? Are you kidding me? This is absolutely ridiculous. And Matrix and I discussed this on one of our impromptu chats. You can find it on my channel, John Le Bon. We probably spent about 30, 45 minutes talking about Stephen Hawking. We watched a video where people here in Australia, in Sydney, paid decent money to go to the Sydney Opera House to see a hologram of Stephen Hawking talking about his astrophysics nonsense. Can you blame the people who run the show for finding this hilariously amusing that we believe is complete and utter nonsense, StinkyCash?
A hologram of Stephen Hawking. Did they also have the hologram of Michael Jackson there to perform?
I mean, you got to imagine at their meetings how they are just slapping themselves on their knees, laughing. Like, hey, what can we do next? Oh, I know. Let's show them a picture of a bowling ball, and we'll clean off an area and make it look like Pluto, and we'll tell them it's Pluto, and then we all believe it. I mean, they are laughing so hard, it's not even funny. I can't deal.
Yeah.
And we're the crazy ones.
Yeah, well, and you said it right. Like, you can't tease Stephen Hawking because, hey, you're teasing a disabled man or whatever. You have to, like, for me, this is hard to get my head around. I don't know what the deal is with Hawking, if he knows what's happening when they supposedly took him on that zero-G ride, the Vomit Comet. Is this a man who knows that he's being used this way?
Or did he die 20 years ago?
Yeah, exactly. I don't pretend to know what they're doing, but it's not us for pointing out that this is all nonsense. That people, if they want to get upset, don't get upset at us. Get upset at the people who are trying to pass this off as real, and for all we know, are taking full advantage of a man who has no capacity to stop them. I mean, who knows what they're doing?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Stephen Hawking, I mean, his condition, ALS, motor neuron syndrome, I mean, the average lifespan, as Jeff said, is 3 years, and with exceptions, people last for 10 years. But Stephen Hawking has had this condition for 50+ years, and it's just, it's a miraculous feat that he's accomplished by, and the coincidence that it's him, the smartest man in the world, he preaches this theoretical physics. It's all about the Big Bang, redshift, black holes, gravity, and so on. And it's once you look into Stephen Hawking and start questioning, what he's saying, and regards to the shape of the Earth and science. I mean, you start to see through it. It's an impossibility that he has ALS, and they've run psyops like the Ice Bucket Challenge that everyone took part in to do their part, support this ALS charity, and one of the things I noticed about that video, is about this finding alien life. This other reinforcing the narrative. Is that they call it the breakthrough initiatives. I wonder what they're trying to break through out there. So for me, Hawkins is Stephen Hoax King. That's what I'm going to be calling him from now on.
Well, there's another way to look at it. I'm not sure if this is the case in your countries, but in Australia, somebody who goes from door to sell things is called a hawker. So Stephen Hawking, the astrophysics space nonsense, and now they've got this guy pushing aliens, and I think the whole alien extraterrestrial life thing, I believe this is all a big psyop that's partly being used to reinforce the spinning ball heliocentric model, and potentially also being used to precondition people for a future alien invasion, Werner von Braun style. StinkyCash, have you heard of this theory before?
Oh, yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And they got both sides in on it because, as we know, science really just comes from this false religion. And you got this Jesuit Pope coming out saying that, we need to look for alien life and that he would baptize Martians. So they got the religion and they got the scientists who are now atheists. They got both sides in on it to push this alien deception. And just the one way aliens are bullshit is because they put aliens all over the movies. They put aliens all over TV. So they want to condition you to believe in aliens. So that's one way it's not real.
Well, I heard someone say the other day, StinkyCash, that he thinks that humans today are as dumb as they've been on recorded history, and they're probably one more generation of dumbing down away from believing in an alien invasion. And I can't disagree with him. I know a lot of people who think they're awake, who completely believe that there are extraterrestrial aliens, if not amongst us already, not far away. And you think about how they were able to fake planes going into a building. How hard would it be for them to fake that an alien had come down and, said, take me to your leader, take me to Jeff C.
It's probably going to happen. I mean, they move their pieces like a chessboard. It happens slowly, but I mean, have you ever seen the movie Idiocracy?
Yeah, I think
documentary.
You call it a documentary? Yeah. Well, yeah. We're only a few years away from buttfuckers.
We are surrounded by people. But think about this. Here is the gravity of the situation. Pardon the pun. But here's where we're at right now. People truly believe that up is down. That on the other side of the ball, there are people who are upside down to them. They truly believe not only that, but that we're spinning at 1,000 miles an hour on our axis. We're spinning around the sun at some ungodly speed. The sun's hurtling through the galaxy. We evolved from monkeys or something similar. There used to exist giant lizards. I mean, the nonsense goes on and on and on, and you question someone about any of this, and they call you crazy. This is idiocracy. That's the reality of what that's how it is today. That's the sad reality.
And John, they hide their occult numbers all throughout the science. So like when I was first waking up to this and I was doing some research, I Googled, how fast does the Earth orbit the sun? And Google tells you 18.5 miles per second. So when you do the math, you multiply by 60 and you multiply by 60 and you get miles per hour, it comes out to 66,600 miles an hour.
I don't doubt that for a second. And of course, you've got the whole tilt of the Earth. Is the Earth tilting at 24.5 degrees or 25.5? I get different stories, which in and of itself should be a problem to people. But if it is,
they say it's 23.4 degrees, which would make the complementary angle 66.6 degrees.
Yep, and then when I looked into that, I got 23.4, and I also got 23.5, so I couldn't even find a consistent story about what angle we're supposedly on. And that in and of itself should make people ask questions.
Yeah, shouldn't the numbers be exact? Like, it's no way that the Earth orbits exactly 66,600 miles per hour. I want a speed exact to the 5th decimal place, because if your math is so good, you should be able to do it.
Yep, I completely agree with you, mate. Well, I'll tell you what, we've very quickly come to the end of the show, and we're going to wrap it up within the 3 hours. So what we're going to do is we're going to go around the round table and get our final thoughts. We'll start with you there, Dirth. I know you have to take off. Episode 7 with StinkyCash, who's been a terrific guest. I wish you could be a regular panel member, Jeff. It's been a lot of fun.
No, it's been great.
The 23rd of the 7th, we'll get your final thoughts first there, deep inside the rabbit hole. David Weiss, live from New York. Over to you.
Well, we didn't get to talk about puddle theory again, which is fine. Don't feel bad. We'll get to it one day. So if people are wondering what is beyond the outer wall, I have it's not my theory, but I call it puddle theory. I just want to comment that, we don't know everything, every answer to flat Earth, but we have lots of them. What I haven't seen is any answers that are anywhere near satisfactory supporting the ball Earth. But Brian Cox made a tweet the other day. I don't know if you guys saw it. Brian Cox, that's the guy's name. Is it Brian Cox?
Yeah, I saw he made fun of the moon hoaxers.
He said, if you don't believe we went to the moon, you're a dickhead. I think he called it knobhead or a knob tip or whatever. But that's his proof that we went to the moon. You're a dickhead.
Yeah. I read that article from Huffington Post, which is a liberal propaganda page, and I was waiting for the proof. And all I got was made fun of.
Yeah, so that's it. They don't have any proof. They just have insults, and they try to belittle you. And when you see that, something's wrong. Just going back, we were talking about 9/11 real quickly. I assume that every single person listening to this knows 9/11 was a hoax. But if you're still investigating 9/11, I suggest you check out Bill Cooper. He was out before 9/11. He called it, and they killed him. So Bill Cooper on YouTube, there's a million videos, and you should watch every single one of them. That's all I have to say.
Thanks for that, Dirth. I do promise, mate, that eventually we'll spend an entire episode talking about puddle theory. I, for one, can't wait for that. Didn't get time tonight. I do apologize. Over to you there, mate.
No problem. Wait, no problem. Well, the last thing is if you go to DIRTH or deepinsidetherabbithole.com, I have a page called Is the Earth a Ball? Lots of videos. Some of StinkyCash's best videos are there. And one of the top videos shows the puddle theory in an animation made by a guy called Kill the Messenger, who has done some good YouTube videos on Flat Earth. So check it out. Good to share with friends and spread the truth. Go ahead.
Excellent stuff. Over to you then, Matrix Decode. We had some internet issues, so I apologise that you didn't get more time to talk tonight, but it's been a fun show. What are your final thoughts for episode 7 with special guest StinkyCash?
I've really enjoyed the show. It's been great to hear Jeff's take on a variety of subjects. Where we are, is really important, and everything that happens here, affects us one way or another. So we covered lots of good topics tonight, and I just really enjoyed the show. Thanks.
Good stuff. Well, I have to say a huge thanks to you, StinkyCash, for coming along. We've done a 3-hour extravaganza. I've had a lot of fun. 2 questions for you. Firstly, what are your final thoughts for episode 7 of the Ball Skeptic Roundtable? And secondly, can we expect to see you on the show again in the future?
Well, this was a lot of fun. You could definitely see me back in the future. The last thing I would leave for the audience is, if you're still on the fence about the ball Earth versus the flat Earth, is watch a flat Earth debunking video. They can't do it. All they can do is use straw man arguments and just completely false theories that are presented by controlled opposition outlets like the Flat Earth Society. So nobody can debunk flat Earth. And if the globe was such this magical truth, this absolute truth, then it should be so simple to see. But it's not at all. So that just leads to more suspicion. It just kind of proves the Earth really is flat.
Excellent stuff. Well, what I'll make sure that I'll do is I'll post a link underneath this video to your channel and some of your best videos. People, I'm sure most of our listeners have checked out your stuff before, StinkyCash, but if they haven't, I recommend they go and do so as soon as they can. You do some good work. We're so thankful you joined us on the show. And make sure you stick around for the after show, which will be in a few minutes. But as for my final thoughts, we've covered a lot of topics tonight, and some of them that many baller skeptics might not have been expecting. So what I'll also do is, underneath this video on YouTube, I'll provide links to 3 documentaries that I strongly recommend people check out, if they haven't already, to give them an idea of the background of some of the things that we've discussed tonight. I'll provide a link to Eric Dubé's Adolf Hitler and the Jew World Order, Eric Hunt's Spielberg's Hoax, Last Days of the Big Lie, and Simon Shack's September Clues. And with everything, when you watch it with a discerning eye. Don't just trust them. Watch it, check their information, come to your own conclusions. But this is the kind of background documentaries that people should be recommending, should be checking out, because there's a lot of gatekeepers out there who want you focused on one or two things. There's so many other things out there. We've been lied to, we've been deceived, and if this is all new information to you, well, don't be afraid, don't be upset. In fact, this is an amazing time to be alive, because now you can go and do the research. It's all out there on the internet. Be excited. You can wake up tomorrow if you've got some spare time. There's plenty of info out there, and I'll provide links to some of it underneath this video on YouTube. My next point for my final thought is I want to make a personal apology. It is 1 o'clock in the morning here. I've stumbled over my words a few times on this episode, and I did forget what I was talking about an hour ago, so I apologize, but I've had a lot of fun. I want to thank, we've had more than 80 people watching live for most of this episode. Each of our previous episodes has had 2,000 views or more, and that's just on my channel. Mark Sargent, Eric Dubé, and Jeranism all uploaded the Roundtable to their own channels and got thousands of views for each. And what that tells me is that there's a big audience out there of people who are interested in this conversation. That fills my heart with warmth. I want to thank each and every one of you for listening, either live or on delay. Thank you for all the positive feedback. The vast majority of the feedback's been positive, and I really do appreciate that. I want to say thanks also to Matrix and to Dearth. Sometimes I don't throw to them enough during the show, and I feel guilty about that, but hopefully between the three of us, we're putting on a decent show, and that's what the feedback seems to tell me. We're going to play out tonight with a track that was suggested to us by our guest, StinkyCash, and I'm going to play that one right now. This is from REM, Man on the Moon. We'll see you guys at 8 a.m. Wednesday next week. The next guest, don't tell me, I should be able to remember this one. Dearth, help me out here. Who's on next week? He's already put himself on mute. I'm really sorry, guys. My hosting tonight hasn't been...
Stars Are Souls, sorry.
Stars Are Souls. We've got Stars Are Souls next week. That'll be Wednesday, 8 a.m. New York time, 10 p.m. Brisbane time. We'll have the live chat there, so if you can, come along and listen live. And thanks again for listening to this episode. This has been episode 7 of the Baller Skeptic Roundtable. Special guest, StinkyCash, on July 23, 2015. And this is REM, Man on the Moon. See you next time.